Hey guys. This is part 5 of What If Naruto Met a Legendary Creature. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 10, Return to Takigakure. It had been 2 months since the duo had left the home of the royal family, and Naruto and Jiraiya walked steadily along the path from the land of fire towards their next destination. So, Gaki? Yeah, Erokyofa? Tell me, in your own opinion, how far do you think you can go by the end of this training trip? Jiraiya asked. Naruto blinked in confusion at the sudden question, his blue eyes looking up into the taller man's black ones. What? You're a Chunin now. Do you think you can make Jounin? Move into the NBU maybe? Possibly succeed in your dream to become Hokage as the ultimate fruit of your labors? Why are you asking me this? The new Chunin replied. You went from the basic academy 3 and then because you had no one to teach you, what with me making sure the village was safe from outside threats with spy networks and all, you had to take several years before you were finally able to get to the Kage Bunshin. A few months later you learned the tree climbing exercise, and it was only until the Chunin exams in Konoha did you learn Kuchios no Jutsu and the water walking technique. Then a few days later you got to the Rasengan. What are you getting at? Though you have a great ability to learn by leaps and bounds, what I'm trying to say is that you had once been used to a slow pace of learning as shown by my explanation of the sporadic rate at which you learn new techniques in your genin days. Jiraiya looked down at his godson. You were unconsciously handicapping yourself, my idiotic godson, and just by staying with me for a little over 9 months has unlocked your potential to learn and grow as a shinobi and as a person. You've never truly been taught anything prior to this trip, and it is only until we got to Yuzu that you've begun to blossom as someone worthy of your family name. Naruto stopped walking and looked down at his own hands. I was handicapped? Now answer my question. How far do you think you can go by the time 3 years have passed? Jiraiya asked. Naruto continued to stare at his hands for a moment, as his mind drew blanks every time he tried to think up an answer. The blonde Namike smirked and released a small chuckle. He looked up at the white-haired Sannin and grinned toothily, an image that reminded the toad Sannin of the boy's mother. By the end of this trip, I think no. I know I can surpass everyone, Naruto said with determination in his voice. If I get beaten, I'll get back up and then find that person and kick their asses. If I win, I'll them to suck it. I am Uzumaki Naruto after all, and nothing will stop me from doing what it takes to succeed in everything I want to do, Dadabayo. Jiraiya nodded his head with a look of pride on his face. That's good. A shinobi like you needs that kind of drive because it's time we finally turned to trying to finish the Rasengan. Really? Naruto asked. Jiraiya nodded. We were busy on Yuzushio teaching you the basics of everything, building on what you already know and also getting you to learn what you could from the scrolls of your ancestors. But now it's time we focused on trying to work on your combination of shape and nature manipulation. Cool. Finally I can do what my old man couldn't do. Naruto then gained a questionable look on his face. Erokyofu? The Rasengan is incomplete like you explained to me earlier during our training in Yuzushio, but now that you've brought it up, why haven't you tried to complete it? I'm sure you know how to do it, combining nature manipulation and shape manipulation. Jiraiya chuckled and scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Actually, Naruto, I can't. Huh? I can't? I've tried to do it. I've tried to do what your father didn't have enough time to do, but in the end it was impossible for me. I have earth and fire natures in my chakra, and every time I tried to combine them with the Rasengan, either got nothing happening at all or a big fireball exploding in my face. I couldn't stabilize it. I gave up after 10 years of trying, but I just couldn't do it. Jiraiya said. I can't complete the Rasengan. But you're Jiraiya. Erokyofu, you can do anything. Jiraiya laughed loudly at the childish admiration that flashed in his godson's eyes. It was these kinds of moments that the toad Sannin learned to cherish. The few times the blonde ever looked at him with respect and admiration were like pots of gold at the end of rainbows. Jiraiya ruffled the blue-eyed shinobi's head. Your faith in me is touching Gaki, but even the gallant Jiraiya cannot do everything. And now the task of completing the Rasengan falls to you entirely. That is, until you choose to teach it to someone too. I won't let you down, Erokyofu. I know you won't, Gaki. Now then, let's keep walking and I'll explain to you what it is you have to do to complete the Rasengan, Jiraiya said as he adjusted his pack. Naruto did the same with a stiff nod and the two males continued their trek to Takigakure. So, what is it exactly that you have to do to combine shape and nature manipulation, Erokyofu? Naruto asked. Well, it's the same process as when you tried to use the Rasengan. Minato made the Rasengan with the purpose of building up his ability to mentally multitask. By combining the need to constantly keep his chakra rotating in multiple directions and provide the necessary power into the technique simultaneously, he was able to succeed in doing so. However, like me, your father obviously came across trouble when it came to actually completing the jutsu. So I just have to do what I normally do when performing a one-handed Rasengan then? Pretty much, but it's going to be difficult. How so? I mean, I know it will be, but how? The Rasengan's stability comes from the user's capability to focus on keeping the Rasengan's power and rotation at the minimum, and or maximum levels needed to keep it active as well as keeping the shape intact. However, when applying the nature chakra, you are splitting your focus a lot more than usual. The addition of nature chakra will compromise your focus and thus the Rasengan will blow up, like you've experienced when you were now learning to use it. However, due to the application of nature chakra, the after effects of your failures will be a bit worse. Huh! With my fire chakra, I had some nasty first-degree burns on my hands along with the chakra burns. If it weren't for medical jutsu, Kami-sama blessed Tsunade for teaching it to the shinobi of Konoha, I wouldn't have much of a right hand left to work with because of how badly it would have been burnt. The earth chakra left my hands bones weak for some time. Well, my chakra natures are wind and lightning. What will that do to me? He asked. The older toad summoner shrugged. No idea. Maybe some electrocution from the lightning, cuts from the wind. Only you would be able to see how it goes. Naruto nodded in understanding before holding out his hand in front of him. He closed his eyes in concentration, chakra and wind swirling around in his palm before condensing into the solid mass of chakra that was the A-rank jutsu made by his father. Naruto stared at the Rasengan in his hand. A few moments passed as he simply looked at the spiraling sphere and Jiraiya waited for his student to do something. The blonde then narrowed his eyes as he tried to split apart his focus, a dangerous task concerning a focus-based ninjutsu like the one he now held. Add wind chakra, he grunted out, a bead of sweat trailing down the side of his face. Jiraiya watched in fascination as the Rasengan suddenly began to take on a pale appearance, the original blue having begun to fade. His ears twitched when he picked up on the sound of mild screeching, but that was when Naruto couldn't hold it any longer, and the partially transformed Rasengan blew up in his face. The teenage shinobi released a yelp of pain as he was sent flying through the air and into a nearby tree as a gust of wind and chakra accompanied his impact. You okay, Gaki? Jiraiya asked as he jogged up to Naruto. He clasped Naruto's hand to pull him up. Ga! The blonde wrenched his hand free and cradled it close to his chest. He and Jiraiya looked at the smoking appendage and Jiraiya released a hiss to personify his pity for the boy. The blonde grunted in pain as he looked down at his twitching hand. Sharp cuts marred the palm along with a few chakra burns in a spiral shape, but they were quickly healing due to Kurama's chakra. Damn it, that shit hurts, Naruto muttered. I can imagine, Jiraiya said. When the Chunin's hand finished healing, a task that took a few seconds longer than usual, Naruto noticed, he allowed Jiraiya to help him to his feet once more. Naruto dusted himself and sucked his teeth to personify his annoyance. Well, that sucked. Now let's try it with lightning-type chakra, Naruto said with conviction as he formed the Kage Bunshin. The clone formed its own Rasengan and looked to its creator. Are you sure this won't be painful, boss? The clone asked. Of course it will be painful, but this will be another good way to test just how durable you clones are. I mean, when during the Chunin exams, you guys were able to take on a Shuriken until the final blow. Naruto gave the cage bunch in the nice guy pose, that is, a thumbs up with a sparkle in his teeth. I have the utmost faith in you, clone me. You know, that speech would be very convincing, if you weren't hiding in that bush 30 feet away from me. Mama, you're focusing too much on the details, clone me. Right, Erokyofu? Don't drag me into this. Jiraiya deadpanned. This is between yourself and you. The clone sulked with anime tears flowing down its face. Erokyofu is so mean. The clone then shook its head and turned back to the Rasengan in its hand. But might as well get it over with. The clone glanced out of the corner of its eyes, sweat dripping from its head when it saw Naruto and Jiraiya give it a thumbs up for another boost of encouragement. The clone sighed before a look of determination flashed across its face and with a cry of effort, began to channel lightning elemental chakra into the spheroid. The clone continued to focus as it added lightning chakra while the original Naruto and his perverted godfather watched in awe as the Rasengan suddenly began to become transparent. Chakra pooled into its core and bolts of lightning lanced out from the core of condensed chakra and formed a shell of spiraling lightning around it. Is that plasma? Jiraiya muttered. As he said that, the ball of lightning exploded with a sound akin to a crack of thunder. The clone vanished in a cloud of smoke and a storm of lightning, and all that was left was an area of scorched earth. Naruto gulped as he looked at the wisp of smoke that rose from his clone's former location. Boy, am I glad I decided not to do it by myself, Naruto said. I could have hurt myself. Could have? Was Kamina's rhetorical reply. Naruto could tell the Raijuu was giving him a deadpan look. Fine, I would have hurt myself. Happy? No, but with this, it shows that you aren't ready for the training I would have done with you during your stay in Taki. Huh? Why? The blonde Jinchuriki asked. Your training was to help you master your new jutsu made with the fusion of lightning and wind chakra. Your Tenten jutsus, that is. However, from your demonstrations at applying the fused elements to your Rasengan shows that you aren't ready to perform such feats yet. Besides, think of this as your first step of mastering the Tenten. How so? When you master the application of your individual chakras into the Rasengan, it would show that you have complete mastery over the element. The Tenten jutsu used in the Chunin exams was a spur-of-the-moment situation, and applying your nature chakras to your blade and performing regular jutsu is child's play for anyone with such elemental affinities. But the Rasengan would be like a true mark of mastery, as it would help you obtain the focus and skill needed to master the Tenten jutsus. Kamina replied. Not to mention, as an added bonus, you may be able to make a Tenten variation of your Rasengan after making Raitun and Futun variations. Naruto's eyes widened. I never thought to make a Tenten variation of the Rasengan. That sounds awesome. The Thunder Beast chuckled within its host's mindscape and nodded its head. Indeed. So back on the road, you've been staring at the smoldering remains of your clone for a while. With the connection cut, Naruto turned away from the result of his attempt of making the Rasengan a Raitun technique. Well, I can safely say that the lightning chakra variation produces a more explosive result, so you should refrain from using it without my supervision, Jiraiya advised. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. So that means we'll be putting more focus on the wind type 1? Naruto asked. Yes. Plus wind is your primary affinity to begin with, so it will probably be easier for you to work with. The Toad Sannin adjusted his pack before walking ahead. Now let's go, we're burning daylight. Alright, Erokyofu. COR. Takigakure knows Sato Waterfall entrance. Taking a few breaks in between for Naruto to train with Kamina, polish his taijutsu styles with Jiraiya and eat, the trip to Taki had taken a bit more than 3 hours. The sun's golden rays weren't as intense as they had been, something both males were thankful for as they were beginning to work up a small sweat from the heat. Naruto's ears twitched, his head snapping up from looking at the ground, when the sound of crashing water met said hearing organs. The massive body of falling water was as majestic and amazing as it was the first time he saw it. Its volume covered a large area of the cliff face that lay behind it, its point of origin obscured by the great amounts of trees that grew atop the result of tectonic plates shifting. The lake that formed from years of erosion and abrasion by the waterfall glistened in the afternoon sun, and its clean appearance made Naruto smile. During the mission to Takigakure, when he and his team had to escort Shibuki back to the hidden village, the lake had been dirted with large amounts of rubbish, plastic bottles, along with plastic and paper bags and dead leaves and branches. With some help from those two kids, whose names Naruto currently failed to recall, they had helped clean the lake, and it was good to see that it remained that way. Jiraiya released a low whistle as he looked at the waterfall. Still as amazing as the day when I first saw it. No matter how many times I see this thing, I can never get tired of it. How many times have you been to Taki-ero-kyofu? Naruto asked. Not many. I mean, I do have a few members of my spy network stationed here, but I've begun to take a greater interest in it now that I've been able to learn some of the members of Akatsuki, Jiraiya said. You know them? Not all, but most. I'll tell you when we arrange our living quarters, we got company. As he said this, the waterfall split neatly down the middle and parted like a pair of curtains. It created a small space, enough for a large man to fit through it. Out from the darkness behind the waterfall, a young shinobi of Takigakure emerged. He looked no older than 20 and had short, spiky, brown hair. His skin was lightly tanned, like Naruto's, and he had vibrant green eyes. His face was slightly rounded by the jawline, but otherwise it was very angular. His build was lean and he wore the standard shinobi outfits of Taki, which consisted of a dark blue, long-sleeves top, similarly colored pants that ended just above the ankles, black shinobi sandals and a black flak jacket to signify his status as a jounin. The Hittite of Takigakure was wrapped securely around his forehead. You two are trespassing on the territory of Takigakure no Sato. In the name of our leader, Shibuki-sama, I kindly ask you to either leave or explain who you are and what your business is should you have an appointment to come to our borders. The jounin asked. He then drew a kunai from the weapons pouch attached to his left hip. If proven hostile, lethal force will be administered. Why are they so cautious? Naruto whispered. Wouldn't they know who you are? We're shinobi, Naruto. Paranoia is in our nature, and not to mention with Henji no Jutsu at many shinobi's disposal, it is only right that they question our identities. Jiraiya whispered back. The Sanin's eyes narrowed suddenly, and he began glancing around the area. Naruto caught on to his godfather's actions and extended a small pulse of chakra, making it act as a sonar. While not the best at sensory-type techniques, the basics of the technique, ninpu, chakura purusu, were easy enough for Naruto to understand. Basically, the user charges a suitable amount of chakra, stores it in their core, and then releases it in the form of a pulse. The pulse then reflects back to the user when it comes into contact with other chakra signatures. Nature chakra would not interfere because it lies on a different wavelength, and only a sage like Jiraiya could detect the actual difference. 1, 2, 5, 10. Naruto counted as he felt the chakra signatures in the surrounding brush being found by the chakura purusu. There's 10 of them, Ero-kyofu. I know, and we don't want to cause an incident, Jiraiya replied. Now follow my lead. Jiraiya raised his hands into the air, Naruto mimicking his sensei's actions. I am Jiraiya of the Sannin from Konohagakure no Sato. This young chunin beside me is my apprentice, Uzumaki Naruto. I am taking him on a training journey and decided that Takigakure no Sato would be a good place for him to train, seeing as how little more than a year ago he helped with your village's coup d'etat. Uzumaki Naruto? The brown-haired man raised an eyebrow. That's right, Naruto assured the man. My team and I helped Shibuki beat Suion during the coup. He tried to take the hero's water and kill Shibuki. Surely those kinds of details will prove that I am Uzumaki Naruto. The jounin nodded. Indeed they do. The knowledge of the coup d'etat would only be known by those within Takigakure shinobi ranks as well as your team and former Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. However, we will need further proof as to whether or not you are truly who you say you are, Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya nodded and then bit his thumb before slamming it down on the ground with a minimal application of chakra. Kuchios no Jutsu. In a plume of white smoke, a small yellow and blue toad appeared before the white-haired Sannin member. It croaked before hopping atop Jiraiya's shoulder as the man rose back to his full height. The toad's summoning scroll. He patted the large scroll attached to his back. I am its sole carrier and one of the only 2 users. The other is my apprentice. The Jounin of Taki nodded his head before putting away his kunai. Very well. You are indeed Jiraiya-sama and Uzumaki Naruto. Come with me and I will lead you to the village entrance. Jiraiya and Naruto nodded and walked across the surface of the lake as they applied the water walking technique. Once they reached the other end of the lake, they followed their escort through the waterfall and into the cave complex that was hidden behind it. The Taki Jounin formed a few quick hand signs and the waterfall closed off behind them and trapped them within the darkness of the cave. There was practically no escape as the force from the waterfall would break any person's body, and you couldn't split it unless you knew the actual jutsu used to part the waterfall, or unless you had complete mastery over wind chakra. Naruto and Jiraiya then looked at their escort as the man reached into his weapons pouch and pulled out 2 lengthy pieces of black cloth. For security purposes, Jiraiya-sama, Uzumaki-san, you will be required to wear these cloths around your eyes. Why? Naruto asked. I didn't have to wear a cloth the last time I came here. We were too lenient with security back then, Uzumaki-san. With Shibuki-sama being how he was back then, you can understand just how lax we were with protection. Naruto nodded in understanding. But now that Shibuki-sama has experienced what happens when someone tries to usurp the leadership status as well as attack the village, he has allowed an increase in shinobi present in Takigakir's forces as well as increasing the amount of precautions to be taken for outsiders entering and exiting the village. I see. Naruto replied. But concerning your shinobi forces, you said that Shibuki allowed for an increase in the shinobi present. What do you mean by that? Well, Uzumaki-san, as you know, Takigakir no Sato is one of the minor shinobi villages. Despite being one of the most, if not the most, successful of the minor villages in the elemental nations, we had no treaties or a stable economy. During the early years of the shinobi era, during the times after the Great Clan Wars when the elemental nations were now being established, Takigakir's shinobi forces were minimal at best, only numbering in the low hundreds. 500 at best, and during the Great Ninja World Wars, Takigakir was used as a cannon fodder resource for the more powerful nations, mainly Konoha and Iwa. We hold no grudges now, but back then, using us as the vanguard was a cruel move. The Takigakir shinobi sighed. Anyway, after exploiting us for resources and the wars were over, our numbers dwindled to below the hundreds. Suien's coup d'état didn't inspire anyone to act because we just didn't care. Shibuki-sama was a coward and an unfit leader back then, and even when he threatened civilians we joined the throng of hostages to see what would happen, to see if maybe Suien's coup would bring about a change we needed to stabilize ourselves as a village. You put innocent lives in danger for the sake of curiosity? Naruto growled, his eyes flashing red. Do you know what the repercussions of your actions could have been if my team hadn't been there? You yourselves could have been killed in the coup. We do not expect those who comes from members of the Big Five to understand our plight, Uzumaki-san. The Jounin said calmly, but his green eyes showed the anger in them. And it would be wise to lower your killing intent. Should you have been anyone else, or if Jiraiya-sama hadn't been present with you, you would be dead as of now. Jiraiya slapped his student upside the head. Stupid Gaki, don't flare killing intent in front of other shinobi. The Toad Summoner bowed his head lightly. Forgive my student's idiotic actions. He doesn't understand the delicate touches required for certain situations such as these, Mr. Mishima. The Jounin replied. Mishima Tuya. Now please, put on the blindfolds and we can proceed to the entrance to the village. Naruto and Jiraiya nodded and wrapped their cloth around their eyes. The Jounin, now known as Tuya, grabbed them by their wrists and led them through the cave complex. The 3 of them walked in silence for a few minutes before they came to a stop. Okay, you may remove your blindfolds, Tuya said as he let go of them. Naruto and Jiraiya untied the cloth from around their eyes and handed them back to the Taki Jounin. The 2 members of Konoha looked around the area and found that they were surrounded on all sides by large tunnels, and before them were a series of small crater-filled pools. The pools were obviously the water-filled tunnels that flowed underground, and only one of them had the ability to enter the village of Taki. If you ended up picking the wrong one, shinobi or not, unless you had the ability to breathe underwater, you would drown before you could swim back. Not to mention that due to the large network of tunnels that ran through the cave complex, Unless one knew their way around or had divine luck on their side, they would become completely lost before they even had a chance to find the pools. Tuya then stood in front of one of the pools and pointed at it. This is the one which leads to the village. Follow me, and be sure to take a deep enough breath. Jiraiya and Naruto nodded. Tuya dove into the pool and the toad Sannin and his apprentice followed right after. Cor. Takigakure no Sato main village. With a splash, Jiraiya, Naruto and Tuya broke through the surface of the large pool of water. The three shinobi climbed atop the water surface and walked it all the way to the shoreline. Naruto and Jiraiya looked down at their soaking forms and frowned. Just arrived and already we have to change our clothes. Naruto muttered. Don't worry, Tuya said. We Taki shinobi are aware of the fact that we would get wet when moving in and out of the village through the water tunnel, so we just evaporate the water with a simple jutsu. Here, let me get it for you. Tuya's hands were a blur before he ended up on the bird sign. Suetun, Johatsu no Jutsu. In a burst of chakra, the water on Tuya's clothes evaporated, a small cloud of steam rising from his now dried form. He then placed his hands on Jiraiya's and Naruto's shoulders and dried them off as well. The blonde and white-haired pair of shinobi looked at themselves with an impressed look on their faces. That's pretty useful, Naruto commented. Indeed. Now then, please follow me to Shibuki-sama's quarters. You will need to run things by him before you can even think of making any sort of living accommodations. The two Konoha shinobi nodded and followed Tuya through the village. Naruto looked around the village as they walked through the streets. The village had been greatly improved upon, and it seemed Shibuki pulled it off quite well in only a year's time. The buildings were composed of thick stone instead of the wood of the great tree, and they were much larger and more stable in appearance. Among the throng of buildings, there was many a plot of soil where crops were shown to be growing. Corn, carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, and onions were growing in separate plots of land. Small apple trees were shown to be scattered here and there as well. As they walked along the edge of the coast, the great tree that was Takigakure's greatest treasure visible for all to see, Naruto glanced behind him and then far in front of him. The village seems bigger. Longer maybe, if that makes any sense. You have a good eye, Uzumaki-san, Tuya complimented. Indeed, the village has indeed grown. Over the past year, and with the application of many Doton Jutsu from our shinobi who have become specialized in that field of ninjutsu, we have expanded the village's size to allow for a greater amount of things to happen in it. We allowed for expansion in residential areas as population growth began to occur. We had more room to indulge in agriculture, hence why you see so many plots of land dedicated to crops. Shibuki-sama said he will be trying to import animals to rear to gain meat and milk, among other things, to add to our growing farming industries. We've also been making consultations with Konoha on how we can develop a better shinobi academy and improve our shinobi systems. Jiraiya and Naruto released low whistles as they looked at the very active village of Takigakure no Sato. In a year, Shibuki had managed to turn his weak village into a budding metropolis in just over a year. The trio continued to walk through the village, Naruto waving to the villagers who were either very polite or had recognized him from the coup d'etat. Of course, those that recognized him from the coup ended up alerting the surrounding children of his presence, and thus the Naruto fan club of Taki had just had its first official meeting with their hero. After managing to pry the children off of his body, with much help needed from his godfather, Tuya and the children's parents, the trio finally made it to the leader tower. Due to it being the living quarters and workplace of their distinguished leader, the leader tower was made to be the tallest and largest building in all of Takigakure. The building was at least 4 stories tall, made entirely out of thick concrete, and had rings of windows wrapped around it. The windows sectioned off the tower at each story, so there were 4 rings of windows. The non-glass areas of the leader tower were colored in various shades of blue and white, and the artist used a large amount of downward strokes so it appeared as if the tower was made of falling water in those areas. The symbol of Takigakure, a downward arrow-like shape which was actually an oddly made waterfall insignia, was displayed proudly on a large circle of red which rested just above the 3rd-story mark. Okay, seriously. Where are you guys getting this money from? Naruto asked as he looked at the massive building. The Hokage's residence was obviously much bigger, but considering what Tuya had explained earlier concerning Taki's economic status, and financial one by extension, it was very surprising that they had built such a massive piece of infrastructure. We export much of the crops we grow along with timber from the great tree. The tree is self-regenerating, so we can never run out of lumber, Tuya explained. Exploitation of resources and all that. Now, Shibuki-sama is on the top floor. Just inform the secretary that I, Mishima Tuya, sent you to meet with Shibuki-sama and you'll be good to go. Thank you, Mishima-san. Jiraiya and Naruto bowed in thanks to their escort. Tuya bowed back to them. It was a pleasure to escort you too. I shall then take my leave. The Taki Jounin then vanished in a flicker of movement as he applied the Shunshin no Jutsu. The two-toed summoners entered the leader tower and glanced around the area. It was a very quaint area, plain blue walls with a few paintings hanging here and there. A staircase off to the side which led to the upper levels of the tower, and in the center of the room was the mahogany desk where the secretary of the tower was sitting, running through some paperwork. The secretary was a pale-skinned, young woman with dark brown hair tied up in a ponytail. She wore a pair of red-framed glasses, a black dress that was very low-cut to reveal a decent amount of cleavage from her C-cup-sized bosom. In her mouth, a cigarette was releasing a trail of smoke into the air. Her black sandals tapped against the ground in annoyance as she looked at the paper in front of her. She didn't even look up from it when Jiraiya and Naruto walked up to her. "What do you want?" she asked roughly. "Hello." Jiraiya glanced down at the woman's chest. His eyes lingered on said bosom for a while before he spied her name tag. Kyoko-san. Mishima Tuya-san sent us to come see Shibuki-dano. The secretary raised an eyebrow at that. Tuya sent you? Well then I guess you have business here. Shibuki-sama is on the top floor. His office is at the end of the hall. Thank you, Naruto said. The woman looked at the teenage Chunin and blew a ring of smoke in his face, causing the blonde to exhale forcefully to blow it away from his face. You're a good kid, brat. It's good to see some brats still have their manners. I hardly use them, but I use them when I think they should. Kyoko chuckled as she stamped out her cigarette in the ashtray. I like you, brat. Now go, the old man with you already left. Naruto's eyes widened when he looked around and found Kyoko was right. The sound of Jiraiya's sandals against the stairs alerted him to the fact that the elder shinobi had already left him behind. Damn it, Kyofo. Naruto muttered before he raced up the stairs after his godfather. Asshole, how could you just up and leave me? Because I can, and you seem to be having such a nice time with C-Cup-chan. C-Cup, how can you even tell? Naruto asked with an eyebrow twitching. When you're as old and perverted as me, the super pervert within you allows you to be able to read a woman's measurements by merely glancing at her. And if she's wearing clothes that hide her figure? The super pervert cannot be denied. Jiraiya exclaimed with pride. Naruto's sweat dropped at Jiraiya and shook his head. Dear Kami, he has no shame. The two shinobi walked up the stairs and followed their directions from Kyoko. Once they reached the top floor of the 4-story building, they walked down the hall to the pair of large wooden doors at the end of said hallway. Jiraiya raised his hand up and rapped on the hard surface with his knuckles. After a few seconds, a response came. Enter, was the muffled reply. Jiraiya turned the knob and pushed the door inwards, opening it with an audible creak. When the doors were opened, the sage and his apprentice immediately surveyed the entirety of the room. The room was very spacious, much like Tsunade's office if not a tad bit smaller. The large glass windows outlined the opposite end of the room and allowed for a fantastic view of the great tree, the surrounding lake, and the areas of the village below. The left side of the office had a large amount of shelves filled to the brim with scrolls and files. The right side of the room was decorated with ink drawings of the previous leaders of Takigakure no Sato, of which there were only 3. An unknown woman, a large man, obviously Shibuki's father, and then Shibuki himself. The potted plants in the corners of the room added a homey feel to the office. And in the center of the room was the large mahogany desk which was completely covered in sheets of paperwork. A pair of chairs sat in front of the desk, most likely to be used by visitors. Shibuki raised his head up as he finished signing his signature on some of the latest pieces of paperwork. With a puff of air from his mouth, he shifted the strands of dark brown hair that had fallen over his dark-colored eyes. Said dark-colored eyes gained a confused look as they focused on the two affiliates of Konohagakure no Sato. The leader of Waterfall tilted his head in confusion before his eyes brightened as he took notice of Naruto. Naruto-kun? Hey, you cowardly leader! Naruto greeted the older shinobi with his trademark foxy grin. Shibuki rose up from his chair and walked around his desk before standing in front of Naruto with a wide grin on his face. It's good to see you, Naruto-kun. Likewise. The two clasped each other's hands firmly, and this made Naruto laugh. You certainly are stronger than you were before. A year ago you didn't have a grip like this. Indeed. Shibuki nodded in agreement. Your words and actions from the coup d'état really stuck with me, and so I used them as the basis of what kind of leader I should become. And despite it only being gradual, I think the progress Takigakure has made is quite satisfactory in my opinion. I'd agree with you on that, Shibuki. We met with one of your shinobi, Tuya-san. Agricultural and lumber exportation, literally expanding the village with Doton jutsus. You've got a pretty good thing going on, Shibuki. Plus I hear you're going to try and improve your Shinobi Academy standards by using our own as a template. You've been well informed, Naruto-kun. And your words warm my heart to hear how you approve of what I've been doing. Shibuki grinned before walking back to his desk. He sat himself down in his seat, and then gestured for Naruto and Jiraiya to sit. They accepted the offer to do so before focusing on the leader of Taki. Jiraiya-sama, first I would like to apologize for not greeting you as I should have. No need, Shibuki-dano. You and Naruto are close friends, and truthfully, unless the situation calls for it, I'd rather keep the context of a situation as informal as needed. The Toad Summoner laughed along with Shibuki. Well, it's good to see a shinobi of your standing still has a sense of humor, Jiraiya-sama. Now then. Shibuki's eyes narrowed as a serious air filled the office. What brings you both to my village? Naruto's eyes widened at the way Shibuki managed to change the atmosphere of the room. Shibuki really had grown up in much more than strength, but as a person as well. Well, Shibuki-dano, the reason we have to Takigakure is so my apprentice here can get some training done. You are Jiraiya-sama's apprentice, Naruto-kun? Shibuki asked with wide eyes. His eyes widened even further when Naruto nodded in confirmation. That's very impressive. You must be more skilled and powerful than I thought if you were to become the apprentice of a Sannin member. Godfather and godson looked at each other and bit their lips to stifle the laughs they wanted to share. They would have insulted each other on the spot and called each other out on their flaws. Naruto still being a bit of an idiot despite his growth, and Jiraiya for being a super pervert who has no shame. But they kept silent so as to allow Shibuki to continue seeing them in a positive light. Give credit where credit is due was one of their many slogans. Anyway, Jiraiya continued, Takigakure, while small in size in terms of the village itself, is actually quite large in terms of open space. We would like your permission to use your lands to practice Naruto's jutsu here in a confined area, and also I want to have him practice some of the more literary areas of being a leader. As you know, Naruto wishes to become Hokage, and so by helping you run through your paperwork I'm hoping he will gain some experience in handling situations that do not require physical confrontation. Learning how to compromise as well as knowing how to approve and veto things will make him a better candidate for Tsunade when she chooses her successor during the later days. Shibuki looked at Naruto with a small smile on his face. You once told me you wished to become a leader who would want to be recognized by his people. I would be honored to aid the hero of Taki in becoming a better Hokage to be. Speaking of that, why am I such a hero here? I had help beating Suion, so why do I get most of the credit? Naruto asked. Humility is an admirable quality, but I'm sure you are aware that credit must be given where credit is due. You delivered the finishing set of blows to Suion, and ended the rebellion against me and my village. There were many witnesses to your Kage Bunshin barrage with that red chakra. Naruto and Jiraiya forced themselves to not react as Shibuki talked about the usage of the Kyuubi's chakra. You are a hero here, Naruto-kun. I say enjoy the fame, but don't let it get to your head. You're too kind, Shibuki. Naruto scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. And thanks for being able to make time from being a leader to helping me with my goal to become Hokage. Don't thank me yet, Naruto-kun. I'm sure Tsunade-sama has been complaining about paperwork as much as I have, and I can assure you, you will feel the full brunt of the evil that is paperwork. Shibuki gestured to the large amount of paper on his desk. Anyway, I need to discuss some things with Jiraiya-sama concerning your living arrangements and whatnot, seeing as how you will be staying here in Taki for quite a while it seems. We are, Jiraiya confirmed. You can run out and explore the village. Visit the Great Tree maybe. We're actually trying to work on making it a tourist attraction once we make another secret tunnel entrance above ground, since having to swim through underwater tunnels does not exactly appeal to people. Shibuki joked. Naruto chuckled and nodded his head. I will, Shibuki. Kyofu, don't stay too long. Don't call me that in front of people, Gaki. He slapped Naruto across the face, making the blonde yelp at pain. Damn it, Kyofu. That hurt. Of course it did. Now get the hell out of here. Jiraiya grabbed Naruto by his collar and opened a window before punting the blonde out of the office. Fuck you! Naruto yelled as he made a hand sign and vanished in a swirl of wind and spark of lightning as he used his Raijuu arc, Shunshin. Jiraiya growled as he shut the window. Shibuki's laughter echoed throughout the office, clutching his sides, to voice his amusement at the scene, while Jiraiya grumbled about what he would do to increase the torture he would inflict upon his apprentice during their training sessions. Shibuki wiped a tear that managed to escape his tear ducts from laughing so hard, while Jiraiya huffed childishly before plopping himself down into his chair once more. The farting sound made by the friction between Jiraiya's ass and the leather cushion made Shibuki laugh a bit more. I knew Naruto-kun was brash, Jiraiya-sama, but to think he would go so far as to be able to insult a Sannin and then, you threw him out the window, and his reply, by Kami-sama, you two make a splendid comedy duo. Shibuki managed to gasp out. After managing to calm his feeling of elation, the brown-haired leader of Taki smiled at the white-haired shinobi. Your interaction shows that you are very close with your student, Jiraiya-sama. I only wish that I had been like Naruto-kun when I was younger, so that Ota-sama and I could have been like that. Pfft, we have our differences, but the brat's my godson. Of course I care for him. Jiraiya replied with a smirk. So the title of Kyofu is real then? I would remove the arrow part. Shibuki's sweat dropped. Well, yes, of course you would. But seeing as you're his godfather, you must have been close to Naruto-kun's parents then? Very. I helped name the boy after all. The name was of the character I made in my first novel, before I made Aika Aika. Jiraiya explained. Though they intended his name to mean Maelstrom and not the ramen topping, despite that being where I got inspiration for it. He laughed before looking down at the ground with a sad smile on his face. I did what I could for my godson. He was born on the day of the Kyuubi attack and he lost everything that day. Parents. Normality. Individuality. He's much stronger than I ever could be as a person because he had forged himself in the fires of his own shitty livelihood. Because I had to follow Sarutobi-sensei's orders, being the only Sannin still having a shred of loyalty to Konoha, I was busy trying to keep Konoha from being invaded by outsiders who would try to attack while we licked our wounds. I sent him more money than he knew what to do with and gave him clothes, though. Anything that wasn't orange he immediately threw out. Idiotic brat. I always wondered why he wore that jumpsuit. Shibuki commented. For attention. Jiraiya replied absent-mindedly. The white-haired Sannin sighed before looking into Shibuki's eyes, the pitiful look replaced with a look as hard as steel. All right, pity time's over. What did you want to discuss? You may have been able to fool Naruto with that living accommodation bullshit, but you're 50 years too early to be trying to trick me, Shibuki Dano. Now talk. Shibuki nodded his head and leaned forward. Resting his elbows on the paper-covered desk, he crossed his hands in front of his face and met Jiraiya's gaze with a serious look of his own. As I expected of you, Jiraiya-sama. I thought you would catch on to the bullshit as you put it. I will talk, and it concerns Naruto-kun actually, or rather, what he is. Jiraiya rose up from his chair and glared at Shibuki. You little bitch. Be calm, Jiraiya-sama. I do not intend to do anything to Naruto-kun. I am his friend and I will not use him or anything that would betray his trust, but I do need him. As for the unasked question though of how I know, as the leader of Takigakure no Sato, I was given scrolls with information regarding the history of Taki since the times of Senju Hashirama and our first leader, Yatagami Hiyori. Shibuki gestured to a picture of the ink drawing of the woman on the wall beside his father's own portrait. And that includes Jinchuriki. So after gaining the information and remembering Naruto's usage of the red chakra during his fight with Soyen 1 year ago, I knew then and there that the boy was a Jinchuriki. Deducing he is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki would be an obvious thing to discover as well. And just what do you intend for my apprentice to do that you need him specifically? Jiraiya asked. As you may or may not know, during the early peace times when Senju Hashirama and Madara Uchiha established the first shinobi village, Kanehigakure no Sato, the other hidden villages formed as well. Due to the fact that Hashirama and Madara's powers were great on their own and the fact that Konoha possessed all 9 bija at the time, in order to prevent wars and conflicts due to power struggles, Hashirama reasoned to distribute the bijou to the other nations. Iwagakure no Sato received the Yambi and Gobi, Kanehigakure no Sato kept the Kyuubi, Sungakure no Sato had the Ichibi, Kirigakure no Sato received the Sanbai and Rokubi, Kumogakure no Sato was given the Nibi and the Hachibi, and in a surprising show of good faith towards the small nation of Takigakure no Sato, Hiyori-sama was given the Nanabai. I am aware of that. Continue. Shibuki nodded. Yes, and you are well aware that while the levels of severity differ, Jinchuriki are treated harshly. Ostracized by society, seen as monsters and not people except by those who are willing to look past the demon, and see them as a container of unbelievable power and a hero to protect us from that sort of power. As you said before, Naruto-kun is a person who is much stronger than any of us when it comes to being a solid character. He had nothing and forged himself, forged his own path, and he is a person I would be glad to call an ally. However, the same cannot be said for Takigakure's Jinchuriki. Jiraiya sat himself back down in the chair, feeling that he'll need to do so as the conversation went on. What happened? The Jinchuriki of the Nanabai no Kabutomushi, is a young girl who was made into a Jinchuriki while Otasama was leader. He chose her because she was the one and only surviving member of Yatagami Hiyori's bloodline, and Hiyori-sama was also the first Jinchuriki of the Nanabai. Shinobi during the Great Clan Wars and post-wars were monsters, and so, like Uzumaki Mito, was able to house a bijou despite not being a child with a still developing chakra circulatory system. Anyway, Fu was given the traditional reaction by my village when she became the Jinchuriki. However, after Fu turned 8 years old and she began to fight when people bullied her, Otasama made the decision to put Fu away. It was a measure used to protect her as well as keep her from becoming a threat to the village. You put her away? Jiraiya asked. Where? Cor. Takigakure no Sato Great Tree. Naruto had spent some time and admired the changes in the once quiet village that was now bustling with activity. He spent most of said time merely walking around and cursing his sensei for tossing him out of the window from 4 stories up. Raijuu Shunshin was a blessing for him to learn, and it saved him from enduring what would have been a painful impact with the ground below. Though, he quickly got bored of it and decided to adhere to Shibuki's request. Hopping off of the roof he was currently sitting on, he landed on another roof before continuing to do so. With a final leap, he cleared the land beneath him and landed with barely a splash atop the surface of the lake. He broke out into a run and headed for the great tree. Now let's give this little speed boost jutsu a test drive. Naruto continued to run while channeling the elements of wind and lightning through his body. He channeled the chakra to the bottom of his feet, and unlike the Rasengan, he didn't need to think about maintaining stability, or rotation speed or anything of the sort. Just plain old chakra application. Raijuu Raime. With a deafening boom that was akin to that of muffled thunderclap, a small explosion of water formed behind Naruto as he suddenly took off at a pace. The wind whipped wildly through his hair as each rapid footstep he made created a thunder-like sound. Whoa, now this is how you run. Eat that, Lee. He pumped his fists into the air. In under 5 minutes he had managed to cross the distance between the village and the great tree, and he stopped applying the chakra needed for his Raijuu arc technique. He continued running as he placed his foot against the bark of the tree and ran up the tree trunk before pushing off to leap to the nearest branch. He continued to jump higher and higher until he reached the very top of the tree. He took a deep breath as he broke through the leaves, balancing out of the branches, and looked over the surrounding trees. He looked up when he felt the wind blow against his face. So this tree was actually tall enough to grow over the cliffs, huh? His ears twitched when he heard the sound of rushing water and turned around to see the beginnings of the massive waterfall as the water came from 2 massive rivers that meandered through the forests at the top of the cliffs, vanishing beneath the canopy from their starting points somewhere within the forests, and ending at the waterfall. After burning the spectacular image, one he hadn't seen since his trip to Uzushio-gakure minus the ruins of his mother's homeland of course into his mind, the blonde Jinchuriki hopped down from his perch and landed atop one of the branches harshly. Due to using quick and light steps during his ascension, Naruto never took notice of it, but due to his more forceful landing on the tree branch, he heard the rather empty-sounding thunk that emanated from it. Having an enhanced sense of hearing helped with that as well. Huh! Naruto looked at the branch in confusion before knocking on it with his knuckles. The same hollow sounds met his ears. He continued doing so until he reached the trunk of the tree where the hollow thunks were now much softer, but still noticeable. If I were any normal shinobi I wouldn't have noticed that this tree was hollow. There's something in this tree, Naruto deduced as he narrowed his eyes at the tree before drawing his short blade from its sheath. The blade hummed with chakra as he held it vertically in front of him. Uzumaki Ryu, Hoshi no Roku Pointo Sarashu. Naruto slashed the bark of the tree with his chakra-lined blade. An upright triangle was made before an upside-down triangle followed after, the 2 triangles intersecting to make the 6-pointed star. Naruto then spun around and lashed out with a strong straight kick that broke through the weakened area of tree bark and left behind a jagged, gaping hole in the tree. The teenage Jinchuriki poked his head through the hole and found the darkness that he expected to find within the great tree. He looked up and found darkness, and looked down to find even more of it. What do you think? Up or down? Naruto asked. Down, obviously, was Kamina's reply. You never find anything when you go up. Kyubi, what about you? A few seconds passed and there was no reply from Kyubi no Yoko. Naruto sighed. Still not talking, huh? Well, it's only been a few days and you practically invented the grudge since you're a mass of negative emotions. You're going to talk to me someday though, Kyubi. Well, down it is, Naruto said before he channeled chakra into his feet and scaled down the inside of the great tree. He reached into his weapons pouch and pulled out a seal tag which had the kanji for light written on it. Fuinjutsu, Hikari, pumping a small bit of chakra, small from Naruto's point of view. A small flash of blue light erupted from the seal tag as the chakra flowing through it illuminated the area in front of him like a flashlight. After a few minutes of walking, the blonde found his seal tag showing him the bottom of the tree. Or at least what he thought was the bottom of the tree. Deciding to let gravity take him down for the last 20 feet, Naruto cancelled his usage of the tree walking exercise and landed on the flat surface. So what do you think we'll find here? Naruto asked as he pointed his chakra light around the area. From what I felt from landing, the tree trunk is extremely thick from this point downwards. There's something in here, was the reply from the Raijuu. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that before turning around and finding a very large stone of some sort. Wow, that's one big rock. Naruto reached out to touch the stone when his inner thunder beast stopped him. Stop! What? Was his question. There's something very disturbing about that stone. I can feel a very ominous-like energy coming from it, very ancient and very powerful from what I can sense, but I don't know what it is. Well, that's not comforting at all. Naruto deadpanned. Don't be a smartass. It's better than being a dumbass. True, but still, keep your guard up, Naruto. You'll never know when, behind you. Naruto dropped his seal tag as he drew his short sword in one fluid motion. A resounding clang echoed through the hollow upper regions of the great tree, but Naruto's eyes widened when the light from his seal tag showed that it was actually a fist, and not a blade that clashed with his sword. The fist drew back into the darkness, and Naruto stood by his light source, glancing every which way. His sword moved in the directions where he felt the killing intent. The clangs of steel against steel-hard fists echoed through the semi-hollow tree. Left. Right. Up. Behind. He had to block from below sometimes to block the uppercuts and the blows to his groin. While not fair, this was an era where foul play gave you victory. No one cares if you get cracked in the balls. If it hurts, it works. Feeling movement to his left, the blonde reacted and lashed out with his blade only to find a fist impacting with the sharp weapon once more. Getting a better look as he held the limb at a stalemate, he found the skin color was a light brown. The limb vanished into the darkness once more, and Naruto's ears twitched as he heard the movement of footsteps against the wood now. Get out! Naruto's eyes widened when he heard the feminine voice echoing through the area. Because of the acoustics he couldn't pinpoint it, but he felt the chakra signature from behind him. He spun around while channeling lightning chakra into his blade and stabbed it skyward. Uzumaki Ryu, Kaminari Shigekiha. Lightning flowed from the handle and up the blade before exploding out of the tip. A burst of blue lightning tore through the air, illuminating the area. With the light produced by his attack, Naruto finally managed to get a glimpse of his opponent's form. From the curves in her build, he confirmed that said enemy was indeed female, but he didn't waste time in taking her form in completely. He leaped onto the wooden walls and pushed off towards his attacker and flipped in midair. His axe kick scored home and sent his opponent descending at a rapid pace. The sound of wood cracking met his ears and the blonde landed on the ground after his opponent, aiming to pin drop onto her down form. However, the kunoichi he was fighting rolled out of the way and Naruto winced as he felt the shock ride up through his legs slightly. He raised his sword to block the kick to his face before redirecting the limb to the side. The thick wood cracked from the force of the blow and made Naruto very aware of just how much strong his opponent was physically. Naruto charged his kodachi with chakra and spun in a circle that left a visible circle of chakra and light around his body. Uzumaki Ryu, Enkin. The circular pulse of chakra slammed into his opponent, sending her skidding backwards from the force of the strike. But Naruto didn't stop there as he went with the momentum of his spin to bring his sword in an upward arc while channeling wind chakra and slashed the air in front of him. Uzumaki Ryu, Kazujiri. The visible arc of chakra-laced wind tore through the air and slammed into his opponent, and caused a small explosion of wind. However, he saw the distortions of air in the darkness as they brushed past his opponent. Said opponent then rushed forward and lashed out with a straight punch. Naruto sidestepped the attack and leaped into the air while front flipping. Uzumaki Ryu, Kabuto Waraime. His blade came down as he began his front flip, aiming to cleave his opponent's skull in half in the process. However, his eyes widened when resistance was met with his attack. He landed behind his opponent after flipping and looked at his blade with complete shock. There's no blood. What is this girl made of? Naruto thought as he turned around. The enemy female lashed out with a straight punch to the chest, but Naruto parried the attack with his sword only for the girl's other hand to grab him by the wrist. With an increase in tightness of the girl's grip, Naruto felt his wrist begin to break, and so his grip slackened and his sword fell to the ground. The kunoichi kicked away the sword and Naruto felt his arms go over his opponent's head. Her hip jammed up against his own and provided the needed thrust to hurl the lean, muscled blonde over her head and slam him into the ground. Naruto grunted from the pain before he was spun around and thrown against the walls of the cylindrical area turned fighting arena. The wood cracked from the force of the impact and the blonde landed on his stomach before quickly rolling to the side to avoid the punch that would have crushed his skull if the way her fist left a small indentation in the thick wood was any indication. Naruto performed a windmill and tried to kick his opponent's feet out from under him, but the result was his leg feeling a bit sore. This proved his idea that the kunoichi's entire body was durable, and not just her fists and skull. He was grabbed by his leg and found it forcibly straightened out. However, he quickly rotated his body with his leg to free the limb before the kunoichi could act to break it. He landed on all fours, ass facing his opponent, and lashed out with a mule kick. Both feet embedded themselves against his opponent's stomach and sent her skidding backwards. He then rushed forward and channeled chakra throughout his body and went into the stance for his Hiryu Taijutsu style. He rushed forward and punched the girl across the face before ducking down while twisting to jam his elbow against the girl's chest. The cough escaping her lips signified she had the air driven out of her lungs. Naruto spun around once more and slammed a powerful kick to the ribs, and then crashed his knee into the kunoichi's stomach. After that blow, he continued by slamming his foot down with great force and bent his legs so he was all but sitting on the ground. With a roar of effort, Naruto brought his fist upwards in the form of a strong uppercut. The uppercut sent the girl's head facing skyward before he slammed another fist against her chin to send her skyward. He ducked down and formed a cross-shaped seal to summon his clone. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. The Cage Bunshin leaped off its creator's back and swung its right leg in a sweeping upward arc that crashed into the kunoichi's jaw to send her further skyward. The follow-up upward kick with the left leg sent her higher into the air. The original Naruto then leaped after his airborne clone, and the clone grabbed the original by his arm and swung him at the enemy ninja. Naruto reared his arms back and clasped his hands together. He slammed them down in a brutal hammer blow that sent his opponent straight back to ground zero before he fell after his opponent with a chakra-covered fist at the ready. The fist made contact and a massive burst of chakra exploded out from the point of impact that seemed to rock the entirety of the great tree itself, and formed a small smoke cloud. The light finally died out from his fallen seal tag as the chakra within it ran dry just before Naruto made contact, but Naruto's night vision was nothing to sneeze at as he was able to see that his opponent had shifted her head to the side. His fist was now within a small crater, and his opponent's lips shifted from a cocky smirk to a ferocious snarl. "Die!" was her exclamation. He quickly shifted his left hand and blocked the harsh kick to the groin, but released a small wheeze when the force made his hand slam against his testicles. He formed a clone to cover for him while he was down. He looked between his clone's legs and made out the motions the kunoichi's silhouette was making. She rose to her feet and tilted her neck harshly, the crack of her neck joints echoing through the semi-hollow tree. As she began dusting herself off, Naruto recovered from his below-the-belt strike and climbed back to his feet thanks to his clone. "You okay, boss?" the clone asked. Naruto nodded while taking another deep breath before stretching himself out. "Yeah. That really hurt though. If I hadn't blocked that I may have been made infertile." "Haiden, Renpungbakur no Jutsu!" the girl yelled out. Naruto and his Cage Bunshin had wide-eyed expressions as she raised her hands in the tiger sign before clapping her hands together. She inhaled deeply and exhaled with great force. Naruto's eyes widened when the darkness was suddenly replaced with white. The brightness from the sudden shift in the amount of light in the area made Naruto yelp in pain as he quickly shut his eyes to keep his retinas from being burned. He was blinded and sneezing because of what the girl just breathed out. "Naruto, defensive jutsu quickly!" Kamina called out. However, the blonde was too slow to react when the girl formed another tiger sign and clapped her hands together. "Haiden, Masatsu Hibana!" The girl suddenly ground her teeth against each other and produced a spark. The small sparks of orange flew from her jaws with a small burst of chakra, and then the powder in the air ignited, followed by the ear-shattering boom of the following explosion. Cor. Takigakure no Sato Leader Tower. The great tree is hollow despite its sturdy build, growing around the thing we needed to keep hidden from the eyes of our village's populace, and made by Senju Hashirama himself. Our village holds a great secret within that tree, and in the era of shinobi, secrets are needed, so I will not go any further about said secret. Now Fu was told by my father that she was given the power of the nanobi to protect the village secret within the tree. She trusted my father with her life, seeing as how my father was the one who practically raised her. He taught her everything from writing to combat, and when he passed away, she took it extremely hard when I told her. Though sadly I cannot say the same for my relationship with her. I was a follower and spineless fool back then, and so I treated her like a demon as well. She hates me like all other members of the human race, as the placebo effect has her believing herself to be the demon that she houses, and she nearly tried to kill me. I want her to know that just because she had a demon that she isn't one, that she and the nanobi are two different beings, and that there are others like her who can live their lives and can be recognized for doing great things. You want Naruto to talk to her? Jiraiya's dialogue was meant to be a statement, not a question from his tone of voice. She has been alone and segregated from the rest of the village for 6 years, Jiraiya-sama. She has a hatred for humanity because of her treatment, and I cannot think of any other way for her to grow as a person and maybe help her break out of her shell of hatred. Naruto-kun possesses the tongue of the gods, one that can create words that will change the hearts and minds of any who listen when he puts his heart and soul into said words. I'll say, the talk no jutsu, as I've come to call it, should be labeled as S-rank jutsu since it's 99.9% effective. Jiraiya jokes. Shibuki laughed lightly. Indeed. So, Jiraiya-sama, may I use Naruto-kun to try and helpful? I can allow it. Naruto has only had interactions with one other Jinchuriki, and that was the one from Suna, and so I think interacting with another of his kind will help him a bit. Jiraiya replied. And I don't think you'll need to introduce them. Knowing Naruto's luck, he's probably going to find her by himself. A muffled boom echoed through the air and Shibuki and Jiraiya's heads snapped in the direction of its source. The members of Takigakure all looked around wondering what and where an explosion would come from since the great tree was completely solid to them, and not to mention there was no physical damage to it. Shibuki turned to Jiraiya with an agape mouth and wide eyes while Jiraiya chuckled as he faced the leader of Waterfall. I told you. Cor. Takigakure knows Sato great tree interior. The kunoichi looked at her handiwork with a smug smirk on her face. The large smoke cloud of shining dust and fire engulfed her opponent's location quite nicely. The boy had put up much more of a fight than she thought, but like all humans, he was weak. No one will harm the sacred relic of Taki. Those who come to take Shibumi-sama's treasure will die. She growled as she remembered the man who had been a parent to her in all but blood and gave her purpose. She was cursed with the idea that she was one for the past 6 years, and so she became one. She was ruthless and she would kill all who dared to harm her master's treasure. As she went to go stand in her usual spot by the large boulder she was to be guarding, but suddenly her eyes widened when she felt a rush of killing intent. She turned around with shock written across her face. Impossible! She exclaimed. The cloud of shining dust and fire then parted with a pulse of red chakra followed by another pulse of killing intent. The girl gritted her teeth from the wind generated by the show of power. Naruto climbed to his feet. His body had only been slightly burned, but the fiery red cloak of demonic energy that covered his body quickly healed him. Though he did lose his right pant leg and the sheath for his no-dachi fell to the ground. The blonde shook his hair, which was now wilder than before. His whisker marks were much darker, and his eyes were now a crimson red with a vertical slit for a pupil. His nails had become claws and canine elongated to become fangs. Thanks to the large remainder of the shining dust, Naruto finally caught a glimpse of his opponent's entire form. The girl was around his age, 14 years old. She wore an orange clip in her short, spiky mint green hair that matched her eye color, which was also orange. Her ninja outfit consisted of a short, sleeveless, white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short white apron skirt over it. Her Takigakure Hitaiite was worn on her right arm. She also carried a cylindrical object in red wrapping on her back, the purpose of which was unknown. The green-haired girl snarled at him when she felt the demonic energy rolling off of Naruto. Naruto snarled back at her, and his snarl only increased in volume when he saw a red chakra coat her own body as well. You're a Jinchuriki? Naruto asked gruffly. The girl shook her head. I lost the right to be human when I made my first kill is what they said. They said I'm a murderer and a killer. So I became the thing they always called me, I'm a demon, was her reply. The green-haired girl's nails became sharper and all of her teeth sharpened, not just her canines. It was then that Naruto noticed the shine that came from her skin as the chakra cloak shrunk down and appeared to cling to her body like a second skin. An exoskeleton of chakra. No wonder she's so durable, and her demonic chakra only makes her that much stronger. Kyubi? Get in close and look straight into her eyes, Naruto. Naruto chose not to question his Bija at the moment, since Kurama chose to talk to him now of all times. Not to mention the fox just saved him from being cooked. Naruto unleashed a roar as Kyuubi gave him another burst of energy, and a single tail bubbled out from his rear and two long ears stretched from the top as the chakra cloak began to gain a more solid look. A black pigment formed around his mouth, and eyes to give him a more feral look. The girls unleashed a roar of her own as two wings bubbled out from the cloak on her back to give her the gift of flight. The chakra wings flapped rapidly and created a buzzing sound. The two Jinchuriki snarled at one another, their crimson and red-orange eyes staring into another with restrained rage. Naruto stamped down on the wooden ground before shooting forwards. Naruto had risen up a clawed hand and swung it at the girl, but the girl flew around and lashed out with a strong kick that sent Naruto rocketing back to the ground. However, as he fell back to earth, he stretched out the arm of his cloak and the large chakra paw wrapped itself around the Taki Kunoichi and brought her to the ground with him as he pulled her down. Both landed in their own respective craters, but quickly tackled each other once more. Their fingers interlocked when they clashed, a shock wave causing the thick tree bark to creak slightly. Naruto looked into the green-haired girl's eyes as Kurama instructed him to do, but suddenly a knee slammed into his jaw, sending his vision skyward before an axe kick crashed down onto his face. The chakra exoskeleton really hurt, even with his fox cloak on. The bug-like woman scuttled along the ground before inhaling deeply and unleashing another cloud of shining dust, but Naruto inhaled deeply and unleashed a pulse of red chakra. Kurama's chakra tore through the scale powder and slammed into the mint-haired girl and sent her careening through the air before Naruto leaped after her. She grabbed her by her ankles and front flipped to build up momentum before swinging her down into the ground. However, she kicked her legs free before kicking the blonde in the jaw. The winged girl then grabbed Naruto by his collar and went into a backwards roll. Earth met sky as Naruto was a bit dizzy from the rolling and released a grunt of pain when he found himself on the bottom. Straddled by his opponent, he found his head snapping to the right from the fierce left hook he was dealt. A right hook sent it to the left. This continued a few more times until Naruto got fed up and gripped the girl by her wrists by utilizing his chakra branching ability. Using the ability of the sentient chakra cloak like he did during his battle with Sasuke at the Valley of the End, the chakra cloak paws branched off from each other and seemed to detach themselves from Naruto's hands. The claws of chakra wrapped themselves around her neck while Naruto's own hands were wrapped around her wrists. His tail then stretched and wrapped around her waist. The blonde forced his fellow Jinchuriki off of his body and then raised her high into the air with his extendable chakra limbs before bringing her back down with great speed. Her cry of pain showed that he managed to pierce through her exoskeleton a bit from the force of the impact. Laying in her personal crater, the Taki Kunoichi's eyes were closed in pain. Naruto then walked up to the girl and dropped down to his knees and planted his hands on either side of her head to give her little room to maneuver herself. The girl's red-orange eyes snapped open, but just as she was about to scream in surprise and from the close proximity between herself and her fellow Jinchuriki, the blonde's Bijou acted. Her pupils dilated as Naruto's kitsune-like eyes stared into her mixed-colored ones. COR. Unknown location. Naruto blinked his eyes rapidly to remove the spots that appeared. He looked around and found himself in a rather empty area. Naruto looked up as he said this and saw that practically everything, but the floor was shrouded in blackness. It was like there was an invisible spotlight directed from above. There was a pale yellow tiled floor beneath his feet that was extremely clean enough for him to see his own reflection. He blinked his blue eyes. Wait a minute. Naruto looked at his reflection in the tiles again, and saw his hair had become blonde and his eyes were their original sapphire blue. I'm me. This doesn't make sense. I was under a transformation, I know I was. Where the hell am I? Well, seems my little experiment worked, kid. Naruto turned around and his eyes were wide when he saw Kurama standing before him. Not in his seal cage. How the hell did you get out? I didn't. I just appeared here just as you did, you loud hairless monkey. Seriously, I thought we got over this when we went through the phases of remaining calm in every situation. Yes, sure, let's remain calm when you and your gargantuan inner demon appear in an unknown area when you're in the middle of a battle with some girl who tried to kill you and is currently mingling with a Digimon. You tell me how the fuck I should be staying calm, Kyuubi. The son of Kushina and Minato suddenly found himself with a face full of fur as Kurama slapped Naruto across his face with one of his 9 tails. Naruto spun around and fell to the ground, shaking his head to remove the stars in his vision. Thanks. He groaned as he climbed back to his feet. Any opportunity to hit you is always a treat, Kit. Huh? Who are you? Naruto and Kurama turned in the direction of the new voice. Out of the blackness came 2 figures. One was immediately recognized as the white-clothed kunoichi who tried to bash Naruto's skull in. The second figure, well, the girl was sitting on top of it, which had Naruto and Kurama tilting their heads in confusion at the sight. The massive beast of an insect resembled a blue, armored kabutomushi with 6 green insect wings, along with a lengthy tail, all growing from the end of its abdomen. The stem of the tail was green, but the wings were orange. Its eyes seemed to be covered by a helmet-like skull, from inside of which an orange glow could be seen. It also had spiked protrusions on its shoulders and a row of slits on each shoulder, and 6 legs, 3 on each side. The legs were also covered by the blue armor, with the exception of the extreme ends, which were green in color. Whoa, that's one big bug, Naruto commented. I dislike being called a bug, you insignificant little worm. The kabutomushi spoke in a rather deep voice. Not as deep as Kurama's, but still rather deep. The beetle then tilted its head up from looking at Naruto and focused its. It didn't even have eyes, so Naruto couldn't really tell if it even focused on him at all. Well, look what Rikudo-jiji dragged in. Kurama, Kyubi no Yoko, Lord of Foxes and strongest of the Bijou. You know we still don't like you for giving us a hegemony of power simply due to tail number. Especially Shikaku, the bastard who complained for years and got into fights with us for that. How many years has it been since we last met? 1, 2, carry the 8, about 200 or 300 years. That was the last time I was ever outside before Madara took control of me and I was forced to fight Hashirama and was sealed into his bitch wife. Did you know Mito completely sucked? She wouldn't even use my chakra at all. Stoic bitch never got mad. Whoa, okay, hold up. Hold everything, Naruto exclaimed, raising his hands in the air. Kyubi, you know the bug? Yeah, Chome, how do you know that giant fur coat? The girl asked. Chome just gave you all of my titles and you still have the audacity to call me a fur coat? If Chome weren't there to cover your sorry ass, you pitiful human, I'd have crushed your mental apparition and you'd be nothing but a vegetable. Kurama growled menacingly and bared his sharp teeth. The girl shivered instinctually at the fox's killing intent and natural air of power as she decided to take notice of it. Ignoring the comments, I still don't like being called a bug, by the way. I am lucky number 7, Chome. Nanabai no Kabutomushi, king of insects, and due to Kurama's tailed hierarchy bullshit, I would be ranked as the 3rd strongest Bijou. The girl here is my Jinchuriki, Fu. And yes, just Fu. No last name. You tried to kill us, Goldilocks. Fu spoke rather rudely. Naruto's eyes twitched. The name's Naruto, and seriously? Girl, I just had a wind-coated blade to your throat. You really want to spout insults regarding hair color? Besides, you got moss for hair. Fuck you. You wish. You probably don't even have a dick down there. You think I don't? Bitch. I got the fucking 9-tailed fox as my Bijou, and per Jinchuriki Bijou relations, Bijou tend to give qualities to their Jinchuriki to allow them to survive. Hence why we have healing factors and immense chakra pools. And in the case of us male Jinchuriki, well, come down from there if you want to see the heat I'm packin'. Besides, you're flat. Flat? Listen here, Goldilocks, I got fucking C-cups. It's just that I have bandages tying them back so that they don't bounce around and get in my way when I go to kick the ass of dickless assholes like you. Naruto and Fu glared at each other, gnashing their teeth. The 2 Bijou glanced at their Jinchuriki and then at each other, sweat drops forming on the backs of their heads. Well, this was going off swimmingly. However, the glaring session soon ended when Fu realized what Naruto just said. The 2 Jinchuriki remained silent towards each other after that, but still held their glares at each other. Naruto was scooped up and placed atop his Bijou's head. Alright, kid, that's enough glaring and swearing, for now. Besides, I think I should explain what this place is. Same here. You want to explain, Kurama, or should I? You do it. I'd like to see if you stop being such a dumbass. You suck, says the one who sucks sap straight from the trees during their larval stage. Kurama snapped. Chomei remained silent at that, merely buzzing his wings in annoyance. Lazy bitch, Chomei muttered. Now then, the explanation of where we are is simple. Whenever Fu is placed in some kind of trouble, mental or physical, my chakra immediately surfaces to block out the offender. However, since Kurama and I are both Bijuu, the chakras basically clashed and resulted in the formation of a connection between Naruto and Fu and placed us here. Now normally when something occurs to a Jinchuriki, they tend to be sent into their mindscapes, the representations of their seals, etc. However, since this happened to both of you little flesh bags and the connection between my chakra and Kurama's chakra had been established, it resulted in the formation of a joint mindscape. Chomei looked at Kurama after finishing his explanation. Did I miss anything? Well, you really aren't that much of a dumbass, are you, Chomei? Kurama grinned toothily when he heard the annoyed buzzing from his younger sibling. However, to answer your question, you did leave out a few things. The thing you should add is that this is probably a deeper level of the mind's subconscious and is probably the reason why Chomei and I are practically free to roam, since in this place, the seals that hold us back aren't strong enough to extend their power into this deep a level of the psyche. It is also another idea of mine that due to the chakra connection between us Bijuu, this kind of thing will most likely only be able to occur between Jinchuriki. Kurama added his 2 cents. He then glanced up at his Jinchuriki. It is also why the annoying Raijuu is not here with us. Raijuu? Chomei questioned. You mean to tell me that they still exist? Long story short, they do, and this brat has one as his teacher. You ain't getting anything else out of me. Naruto and Fu looked at their respective Bijuu in shock and then to each other. Damn. You aren't going to try and kill me here, are you? Fu asked Chomei. The insect buzzed his wings in annoyance. Your leader, the spineless wimp, Shibumi or whatever his name is. Shibuki. Fu and Naruto corrected, though their simultaneous speech caused them to glare at each other once more. It's Shibuki, Chomei. Shibumi-sama is 100 times the human than that piece of shit he calls a son. Oi, lay off. Shibuki's my friend. Well, considering how much of a piece of shit you are, Goldilocks, it doesn't surprise me. You want to start something, Mosshead? Silence. Komiai's voice startled both Jinchuriki and got them to stop yelling at each other. Now, as I was saying, Shibuki, he told you of what the other elemental nations' countries are experiencing, especially the Big Five. Akatsuki's roaming around trying to catch us Bijuu, and despite the fact that we could easily flatten S-rank shinobi like them, I'd rather not take any chances of being outside my seal with a Sharingan user being in that group. Those eyes can turn a Bijuu into a puppet as well as any Mokutan jutsu that Hashirama team could use, Chomei said. Kurama growled at the mention of the cursed Ojutsu, the one that managed to subjugate him. Twice. I'd flatten those accursed Uchiha, Kurama muttered. Speaking of not killing Jinchuriki, Kurama, why haven't you killed this one yet? Word spreads pretty quickly when an old Jinchuriki dies and a new Jinchuriki is made in these lands. You had 2 from what we heard, so, yeah? Chomei asked. I take offense to that. No one cares what you think, Goldilocks. And no one was talking to you, Mosshead. Shut up, Kit. Anyway, at first, I kept the kid alive because I didn't want to die. Gave him chakra when he needed it, and of course, tried to take control when I did. Failed due to the fact that his seal is a double tetragram seal with practically no weaknesses other than the fact that it loosens with either the use of the key seal, or when the kit uses too much of my chakra. You know Fuinjutsu? The kit here is an Uzumaki by blood. Got his bastard of a father's genes in terms of the genotype stuff, as you see by the lack of red hair, Kurama replied. Anyway, the kid has caught my interest once more since a few days ago he made a rather unexpected deal with me. You actually paid attention to that? Annoying human flesh bag or not, you do have your moments. I expect you to keep to your word though, that is part of your nindo, is it not? Naruto growled at Kyubi for twisting his own moral code against him. Said proposition is why I'm helping him stay alive now other than wanting to stay alive myself. So I keep him alive to keep things interesting and make sure he comes through to fulfill that promise he made to me. So basically, you got softer? Chomei tilted his head in confusion. I didn't go soft, you stupid insect. Kurama roared. Oh, don't be like that, Onii-chan. Kurama growled when Chomei accented the syllables of Onii-chan. Say that again and I will make your punishment as painful as possible. Kurama's gone soft. Kurama's gone soft. Chomei sang, causing the massive kitsune to wrap 3 of his 9 tails around the bug's neck and proceed to comically choke the bug. See how soft I am when I snap your neck. Chomei and Kurama then proceeded to get into a tussle, their Jinchuriki wisely leaping off of their bijou's heads and observing from very far away. You know, when the bug called Kurama Onii-chan, I thought it was just out of spite, but the bijou really do seem to act like siblings. I mean, older brothers do that to their younger brother. Naruto spoke. I'll say. The fur coat looks like he's actually used to this. I mean, only an experienced elder sibling could administer a noogie like that. Fu gestured to the current situation of a giant humanoid kitsune grinding its knuckles against the skull of a massive beetle. Fu and Naruto continued to watch the 2 demonic beings fight for a few more moments before turning to each other. Look, Fu, honestly we didn't exactly meet on the best of terms. You nearly killed me, Goldilocks. So did you, Mosshead. Naruto countered. So, mind telling me what exactly it is that you're guarding? No. She growled. Shibumi-sama, the father of that spineless wimp, Shibuki, he tasked me with the act of protecting it. A demonic relic from ancient times is what he said it was. He appealed to my title as a demon, and so as a demon I found it to be my personal duty to protect the relic from thieves and destroyers like you. I didn't come to steal it or destroy it. Naruto stared directly into Fu's eyes. I just happened to figure out that the great tree was hollow and broke into it to see what was down here. Curiosity is all that led me here. Curiosity killed the cat, Goldilocks. Fuck you, Mosshead. As if anyone would want to have a demon as one to do that with. She muttered. Besides, I don't have family, friends, or lovers. Having none of that actually makes the job of protecting the ancient relic a lot easier. Duty before pleasure and all that. Naruto nodded, but then his eyes widened. Wait, you really didn't have a friend? Fu glared at him upon bringing it back up. Shut up, alright, Goldilocks. That idiot Shibuki is nothing more than a source of food and clothing every now and then, but he is never a friend. I'm not a human and I'm not a Jinchuriki. I am a demon. And you are too. Hey, I am no demon. I know what I am, and the bijou and us Jinchuriki, we're completely separate beings. Learn the difference because that fact is what separates us from being the bijou themselves. You're naive to think that, Goldilocks. The day we got the bijou is the day we became demons ourselves, and we cannot turn back, and that is an ideology I made for myself. Look, you've obviously had a better life compared to the other 8, and not everyone has the luxury of having friends, so just go back home to your little fantasy land and stay there. Naruto remained silent as Fu glared at him. It was true. For 12 years, he had been unaware of his own status as a Jinchuriki, and if it wasn't for the Mizuki incident, he couldn't even think how much longer it would have been until he was finally told the truth about being the holder of the Kyubi no Yoko. Sarutobi Hiruzen shielded him from the worst of the village's anti-demon members, and he had made friends. He remembered when he met Gaara. The boy was alone and made into an apathetic weapon of granule-powered destruction. What, no comment now, Goldilocks? Naruto remained silent. That's what I thought. Now let's get our bijou and get out so you don't have to talk to me anymore. Fu's voice dropped to a whisper. No one ever wants to talk to the demon girl after all. Naruto's eyes widened at that as he remembered his own dealings with the villagers of Konoha calling him things like demon brat and hell spawn, among other things. However, before he could get a word in, Fu had already walked off to where Kurama and Chomei had finished their little squabble and were walking over to them. Damn it, Kurama, you almost broke my legs. Well, that's what you get for annoying me and trying to make yourself out to be a big badass bijou, which you aren't. Kurama and Chomei then looked down at their Jinchuriki, where Naruto was confused and shocked at the same time, and Fu was basically in a pissed-off mood. Fu walked over to her Bijou and easily hopped atop the giant beetle's head. Time to go. Don't tell me what to do, brat. But I guess now that you two seem to have pissed each other off even more now, it would be best to separate you two. Later, Kurama. Chomei managed to get it one last whack to Kurama's head with his upper leg, but the Kyuubi quickly lashed out with a punch to the face just as the Nanabi vanished in a flash of red, the yelp of pain echoing through the mindscape area. Cor. Kurama and Naruto vanished as well before reappearing in their original mindscape. Kamina's eyes widened when he saw Naruto and Kurama appear before looking between them both. What the hell happened? The Thunder Beast exclaimed. Kurama had just vanished from his cage with your mental self. Kurama and Naruto looked at each other, and then back to Kamina. What happens between Jinchuriki and Bijou stays between Jinchuriki and Bijou, Kurama said. I'm sorry, Kamina-sensei, but what happened between Fu and Nanabi and us is kind of a personal thing. The wolf-like divine being stared in surprise at his student. Naruto had secrets, he understood that, but during the entire time he was here Naruto had never had to be secretive with him. Kamina could only remain silent and a bit betrayed by his student, but like the boy said, this was a matter between Jinchuriki and Bijou. Divine being he may be, but even Kamina had boundaries he couldn't cross. The blonde nodded in thanks for his teacher's understanding before vanishing from the mindscape. Cor. Naruto opened his eyes the same time as Fu's and found himself still hovering over the mint-haired girl. Naruto rose back to his feet and offered his hand to the Nanabi Jinchuriki, but she swatted it away. She climbed to her feet by herself and dusted herself off before glaring at him. Fierce orange eyes met calm sapphire blue. Didn't I just tell you to get the hell out of here? Even if I do, I'll just come back. Fu's eyes widened. Huh? Hearing that you never had a friend, it's a sad existence. I once learned from someone who was once my enemy, someone I could have called a friend, that a person becomes truly strong if they find someone they care about, if they make bonds with people. You're a Jinchuriki, not a demon. You may make that claim for yourself, but I know better and you're not a demon. Yes, I am. No, you're not, he shouted back. And if I have to keep coming back to this tree, even if I have to fight you every time, I will do whatever it takes to make sure you get that stupid ideology beaten out of you. Get out. Naruto looked at the green-eyed girl and scoffed at her. And people called me an idiot. I will come back here, I promise you that, and no matter how long it takes, I'll show you you're not a demon. See you tomorrow, Mosshead. And with that, Naruto vanished in a spark of lightning and a swirl of wind. Chapter 11. Rising from the Ashes, the Phoenix of the South. Fu sat on the ground as she stared aimlessly in the darkness of the hollow tree, otherwise her sanctuary and above all else her home. She didn't have the luxury like the normal people of the village to have a nice, warm apartment or house that she could call home. All she had was an underground fort that resided under the hollow tree. For 6 years she had lived there, 6 years in isolation, not having any human contact aside from getting her monthly supply of rations from shinobi that worked under Shibuki, going in disguise, as well as getting clothing and ninja tools for missions. For her, that was as depressing as it could get. She was a chunin and would be considered a tokubetsu jonin, or jonin, after the years of training she had put herself through after the death of Shibumi. However, she knew she wouldn't get that rank in a place like this. Not where the people rejected her like she was the beast inside her. Fu, after all these years, lost hope in humanity. She slowly started to hate it and lash out in anger because of the sorrow that she went through as a child. Over time, she no longer felt human. If she couldn't be seen as a human in the eyes of those around her, then she would accept her fate and become the thing that the people of Takigakure saw her as. She saw herself as a demon and acted as such. She was fine feeling that way. Her heart was content knowing that she didn't have friends and that she didn't need to be accepted by others. Though that soon changed by the words spouted out by one anomaly that had entered her life. Naruto Uzumaki. A Jinchuriki like her, however, he was the host for the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the strongest amongst the bijou. It had been nearly 2 months since she had met him, since he had made that promise to always come to see her. To her surprise and annoyance, he stayed true to his word. Every day, the boy would indeed come visit her. Of course, she would do her best to shoo him off, even going so far as to fight him tooth and nail to remove him from the premises that was the hollow inside of the great tree. The orange-eyed Jinchuriki tried to get Naruto to quit bothering her so that she would be left to her own devices, but the blonde was indeed persistent, and she had to give him credit for his tenacious nature and keeping his own word. It was childish for a teenager to truly behave in the manner that he was displaying with regard to something so seemingly unimportant such as seeing her every day. It was rather admirable, and, with a begrudging attitude, she respected him for it and found it somewhat cute in its own weird, stalkerish way, though she wouldn't admit to that openly. It had taken the entirety of his first month of visiting to make her realize that even her everyday attempts at killing him to get him to leave her sanctuary, that he wouldn't stop, and that he wouldn't just stay down and die due to the stupid Kyuubi. As a result, she just decided to stop bothering him and just focus on her duty to guard the relic of Takigakure. Though she would admit that there were a few pluses to having the blonde Jinchuriki's company. He would bring food, especially her favorite dessert of chocolate ice cream once he figured it out. He just went with the idea that when stereotypical girls were in depression or lonely, they ate something chocolate, and since he had the childish assumption that everyone loves ice cream, well, let's just say he got it right. He would also tell her stories about life in his village when he was there, and some of the stories he had of his journeys during his training. Now, while she didn't seem interested in his tales, she couldn't help but be somewhat envious about them. Getting friends, traveling outside his own village. She couldn't help but feel jealous about another Jinchuriki like herself, living the life she always dreamed about. To be accepted by others. Yet there were downsides in having him around. He was annoying and bothersome, constantly asking her questions about her life and about what her bijou, chomei, was like. What was her favorite food besides chocolate ice cream? Did she know her parents? What kind of genetics gave her orange eyes? Why would she wear white as the color for her outfit if she was going to assassinate people in the dark? That one was very hypocritical of him since she remembered when he told of his wearing of the neon orange jumpsuit. Overall, Naruto's presence was very troublesome, seemed like a fitting word in her opinion. The mint-haired Taki shinobi sighed as her thoughts slightly drifted away from the blonde and looked at her sanctuary. While her home was in an isolated location, that didn't mean that the shinobi who hated her would not find her home. The female Jinchuriki knew that sooner or later, she would have to move into one of her other shelters underground so that way, the shinobi would lose her tracks. This was one of the reasons why she hated Shibuki. He lacked the will and aura of authority that his father held, the ability to hold his shinobi on a leash. While they obeyed Shibuki without question, while they waited on hand and foot for him, he held on to their leashes loosely. Unlike his father, he would give them several warnings, something his father did not give to the shinobi. Shibumi would have physically beaten them down, suspended them with no pay, had their chakra sealed up or given them 10 lashes on their back. The rarest thing Shibumi would do was kill them, though this only happened to a handful that went too far in assaulting her when she was a child. She knew Shibumi would only have to do that if truly necessary though. Taki only held a handful of jonin, and at that time, he was the only true S-class shinobi before he died drinking the hero's water. Shibumi was like a father to her, and while she respected her late surrogate father, she could never respect his son. He couldn't even hold a finger to her in terms of fighting prowess, a Jinchuriki that should have been made jonin years ago. Her emotions clouded her perception of the world outside and her thoughts dulled down deep inside her consciousness. The emotional toll of the people that abused her in the past gave her post-traumatic stress. She could ignore it, and while the pain had lessened over the years, the feeling of anger and envy brought those faint memories of people harshly abusing her verbally. "Get out of here, demon! No one wants you around, you stupid demon child! Leave this place now, demon whore!" Fu, feeling the intensity of the memories, held her head in panic and felt a wave of anxiety rush into her being. For years she had been called these things and many more. For years she had been ostracized by Taki society, and soon it came into her mind that she was a demon, a monster in human form. No, you're not. Orange eyes widened as the image and words of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki replaced the horrible ones she fought to keep repressed. She continued to see vivid images of the blonde, and she could only ask one question that ran into her mind. Why? Why was he different from her? What had made him turn out the way he was and not fall into the same state as her or the other Jinchuriki like them? Why was he the lucky one? Why? She muttered. Ba bump! A light purplish glow emanated from the sacred item that Shibumi promised her to safeguard. It gave a low vibrating sound which sounded like a heartbeat. The glow died, but erupted once more as it resonated with the emotions of the emotionally unstable Jinchuriki. The Nanabi Jinchuriki, lost in her panic, dwelled on her thoughts, emotions flaring out. Her anger, her envy, it all came to the surface. The families of the people in Taki, the blonde Jinchuriki's optimism, it made her angry that she was the one who was different. That she was the only one who was alone. She wanted to know why she was alone. She wanted to know why he was so damned happy around her, and she didn't have a family. Her anger delved into the Nanabi's chakra and her eyes flared a light yellow, and she screamed. Why am I alone? Why am I the only one suffering? She cried out in anger, jealousy, and above all, sadness. She had never felt these emotions in years, and it was only after meeting Naruto that she had these emotions returned to her. The dam had burst, and the flood flowed forth with amazing power. She continued to scream before punching the wooden ground repeatedly. Why? 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 With each cry, she punched the ground harder and harder until it thick wood began to crack and break apart. Ba bump! Ba bump! The shine of the light had intensified. Cracks around the sphere were showing as the seal covering it was slowly being eaten away. The light flowed from the cracks and a low sound was reverberating out of the orb. Suddenly, energy began to slowly come out of it. Cor. Fu's mindscape. Chomei lazily opened his eyes within his exoskeleton-covered head. A disturbance had awoken him within the depths of his cage. The Nanabi no Kabutomushi grunted as he raised himself, his wings vibrantly buzzing. The Kabutomushi beetle lowered his head and gave a low hiss. At first he had thought it was Fu's frequent cries of anger, but he could feel something past that, something dangerous within the same room as Fu. He closed his eyes and focused on synchronizing Fu's senses with Own as his chakra flowed around her. It only took a matter of time to find out where it was coming from. After a few moments, Chomei could sense the energy clearly now from within his prison and looked up. He buzzed in slight worry. He had not felt this type of energy before. It was foreign to him in his 600 years of life. What's more, the energy itself was malicious in nature, untamed and wild, and to make matters worse, it was attracted to his own chakra. Chomei had released his chakra out of Fu's system before she could grab any more from him, but had not attempted to coax her out of it. Each time he had done so had always ended in failure. Get your ass into gear, girl. Shibumi left you a gift that is not good-natured, he said as he retreated into the recesses of his prison. Cor. Fu's anger was still holding on, but it only took minutes before the anger she was holding so deeply died down. The mint-haired kunoichi then took notice of the glow of the sphere along with the fact that it strummed a heavy heartbeat-like sound which echoed throughout the vicinity of the hollow tree. The rocky shell of the sphere was close to releasing the energy. The only thing holding its release was the remnant formation of the seal that was holding it at bay, despite it slowly being eaten away by the power itself. It only took Fu seconds to move, but by the time she did, the final strands of the seal deteriorated and the sphere had been engulfed in a violet light which seemed to burst forth, phasing through Fu, and pushed her down to the ground with terrific force. The energy had pushed through the thick structure of the tree, cutting through it like a hot knife through butter, and entered the outside. Within moments the light had died down, and soon the room had become dark once again with the only form of light coming into the area being the sunlight coming from the newly formed hole. Fu groaned on her back before she coughed heavily, taking in deep breaths of air into her lungs. The force had driven the wind from her lungs and to also experience a bit of backlash from her head hitting the ground causing her sight to be somewhat disoriented. After a few minutes of getting air back into her lungs, she lifted her upper body off of the ground and placed a hand on her head. Ugh! She hissed while rubbing the aching part of her skull. What was that? She muttered before she looked around the tree. She could not see where the light came from, but whatever it was gone now. She hunched forward onto her knees and coughed a few more times, releasing whatever foreign material had gotten in her throat. As she moved, she felt shards of some sort of solid mass underneath the palm of her left hand. She raised her hand up and focused on the shard, her fingers feeling the texture. Her eyes widened in realization as she found out that the shard was actually a piece of the stone relic she was supposed to protect. She felt panic grow inside her chest and she looked around the area to notice the debris of broken shards around the place. She just stared, not moving as she felt tears dwelling in her eyes, almost attempting to force themselves out. She had failed her mission in protecting the sphere, she had failed Shibumi. Fu's ears twitched from the sound that had reverberated within the vicinity. She raised her head and continued to hear the soft cry within the shadows. Her orange eyes focused on the shadows only for them to be met with a set of glowing yellow eyes. The shining orb stared right back at her, unblinking. A bead of sweat moved down the side of her face as she had gazed upon the round, yellow eyes. Her instincts were telling her to flee, but her senses had been dulled, relaxed for some reason as if she wasn't in danger at all. Fu sat upright as she kept her orange orbs locked on the golden yellow ones. She tilted to the left, and then to the right, observing that the eyes followed her eyes' movement. After a few moments the eyes closed, and a soft sigh had erupted from where it was. A low, purple dust cloud had spread out into the room and came close by to Fu. The female had taken a soft sniff before she sneezed and rubbed her nose. The mint-haired female opened her eyes to see the form of the creature was moving towards her. Out of the shadows the creature had come out from the corner, and the faint amounts of sunlight that entered the slowly regenerating tree revealed its form. Its neck was 2 feet in length, head and in the shape of a bird. Its body was protected by a type of hard coating which was identical to a turtle shell, but it was not reptilian-like in nature. It had no legs, but it possessed 6 tentacles which had helped move the creature towards the Taki Kunoichi. It was closer to Fu now, its head placing itself on her lap. The creature made a soft gurgling sound as if to communicate with her, but it was something that not even Fu would be able to understand. Fu had looked upon the mouthless creature and slowly placed a hand on its head. It gave no response to danger and slowly, Fu had rubbed the top of the creature's head gently. It gave a light coo in delight, allowing Fu to smile at its behavior. "You're a strange one," she commented. "I haven't seen anything like you before," she said to the creature which looked at her. "I wonder where you came from." The Jinchuriki's gaze quickly went to the coating of its body and her eyes widened as she noticed markings on its body, markings that had been identical to the seal formula that had been placed on the stone relic. She reached forth to touch the markings, but slowly paused as she remembered something long ago. When Shibumi gave her mission to protect the relic. Flashback. Shibumi sat outside in front of the village's largest waterfall, which had been surrounded by smaller-sized falling streams. He gazed upon its crystal-clear water which sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. In the large man's hand, he held a black sphere which had previously been resting on the ground. Slowly, he held it out in the direction of a young 9-year-old Fu who had sat in front of the older shinobi with her chunin flak jacket next to her. Fu gazed upon the orb and paused as she looked at Shibumi, who spoke in a low gruff voice. "Fu, I have a mission for you. A mission so dire that I think you are the only one who can do this. It is an S-class mission." He looked at her with dark eyes, the serious expression never leaving his face. "I need you to protect this Fu." He pushed the obsidian rock closer to her. "Watch over it with your life." Fu looked at the sphere and paused. "Shibumi-sama, have you gone senile already?" the child shinobi asked. "You are asking me to protect a rock." "A rock? Who gives a chunin a high-class mission to protect a rock?" "It is not a rock, Fu." Fu flinched at his strict tone and looked at him. She could see the look in his eyes as she stared off into the waterfall. They were filled with a mixture of emotions such as fear, worry, regret, and a hint of remorse. She did not understand what had made the leader of Taki act so strangely, but there was something that had been bothering him. More so than anything, it had been involved with this rock. The leader of Taki pinched the bridge of his nose and took a deep breath to calm himself. That is not a rock. Shibumi spoke with a much calmer tone this time. It's something sacred to us, more sacred than even the hero's water that we hold in our possession. Fu's eyes widened. More important than the hero's water? She asked with surprise. Shibumi nodded and rested the stone down between himself and Fu. It is, but this treasure is also dangerous. It holds a tale that is darker than the stories of any shinobi war. The large man closed his eyes and relaxed his body as he sighed. There is a story that was told to me when I was a young boy. My father had told it to me, just as his father before him. The story had gone farther back to when the elemental nations had been formed, a story that even I had not believed when I was your age, he said as he looked at Fu. Long ago, there was a mythical creature that roamed this land. It fed on the chakra of all living creatures in order to keep itself alive. It was massive in size. It gave off immense power in which no shinobi could have ever felt since the days of the great clan wars. It was aggressive to the core, wild, and always eating life around it. It burned down wildlife with the power it held, and none could defeat it. All who attempted had failed and fell swiftly to their deaths. But they weren't powerful shinobi like you were, weren't they, Shibumi? The man smirked. Understand this, Fu. The shinobi world in those days of the past were harsh, brutal, and truly savage beyond anything I have ever seen in my life. I would say that many shinobi in the time of the legend were far stronger than myself, stronger than even some of the Kage today. Shinobi that were strong and had fallen to their demise under the beast's power is something to comprehend only in the imagination. I do not understand, though. Fu tilted her head cutely in confusion. How can something so powerful disappear if it cannot be killed by natural means? She looked at him, confused with the details of the story. True, it couldn't be killed. He glanced at the stone. However, there can be other methods in which one could subdue the beast. One reason is quite simple and ironic. One person has used the same method which is much similar to your companion inside you. They sealed the beast. Fu's eyes widened as she looked at Shibumi and squeezed her fist at the thought of the method. Sometimes she had wished that the sealing arts had died off long ago, but that would be saying too much. Fu knew the stories of how the tailed beast had acted in the wild, but she couldn't listen to the ignorance of people. She had talked to Chome before, and as briefly and unfriendly as it was, she could understand why he would be aggressive towards her. He was a being of pure power. It was mankind's ignorance to fear what they did not understand and by instinct would attack it without hesitation. Fu paused as she looked at Shibumi before she looked down and stared at the sphere. I understand, but what is it that makes this heavy rock connected to the story? It doesn't look like it is some key. That's because it isn't a key, Fu, for what you are holding is the very beast itself sealed inside. The leader of Taki looked at Fu's shocked and fearful expression and gave a small chuckle. Do not fret, Fu, I think you have nothing to be worried about. My ancestor from many centuries ago had faced the creature and sealed it away with a powerful seal that was forged by a master clan of seal masters which was made to last for centuries. As you can see, it's been holding out quite well. He had hoped that this would weaken the beast enough for when it would be free, the people of the future would be able to smite the beast at its weakest state. For centuries, my family has watched over this with their lives, waiting for the moment the beast would release itself from its prison so they may end what would cause as much chaos as a bijou. The large-built man placed his hand on Fu's head as he rubbed it. I place this duty under your care as the last mission I give to you, Fu of Taki, Jinchuriki of the Nanabai no Kabutamushi, and great-great-granddaughter of our first leader, and the first Jinchuriki of the Nanabai, Nanao-sama. Fu looked at Shibumi and paused as she stared at him. Your last. The man didn't make any movements. He only gave a sad smile. I would trust this duty with my son, but I know well enough that he will not be strong enough to handle this duty, even if it's a family right. I am also afraid that I might not be there when the time is needed in order to destroy this creature once the time is necessary. Therefore, I am entrusting this right to you, to the one person I could trust most and to the one person who may have the power to subdue this creature. Can I trust you on this? Fu looked at the middle-aged man as he stared at her. The look in his eyes held honesty and truth, and for the first time in her life, she had felt as though she had gained some new purpose in what she felt was her meaningless life, something that was more important than her being the Jinchuriki of Nanabai. "Why, yes," she exclaimed as she looked at the older male with excitement. Shibumi nodded, accepting her words, and it would remain in his thoughts till the moment he died protecting his village from wrath of rogue ninja that attempted to overtake the village. End flashback. Fu looked at the creature on her lap and paused. She stared at it with her pupilless orange eyes, and the monster stared at her right back with glowing yellow ones. Fu had not made any movements whatsoever, to give the monster any sudden instinct that she was a threat. Slowly, the kunoichi moved her hand to her pouch and slowly put her hand inside to grab a kunai. Yet the moment that she had moved her hand to the pouch, she had noticed the eyes of the creature go from glowing yellow to shining violet. She was confused before she heard the sound of metal being unsheathed. She froze up, cold sweat dripping down her forehead as she swallowed heavily. Slowly, Fu turned and saw 3 men in the dark. They looked like shinobi by the cold looks of their eyes and the heavy weaponry they possessed. "Demon," they whispered softly as they stared at Fu with dead eyes, moving steadily towards her. Fu moved away from the creature as she moved away from her assailants, pulling out the kunai she was about to use on the odd-looking creature. She gritted her teeth as she pointed her blade at the shadow-encased figures. "Don't make me kill you, demon," they whispered once more, and just before she could react they moved into shadow and attacked her. "Die!" At that moment all Fu could see was true darkness. With the cold nature of the entities around her, she felt alone and isolated. She acted upon these feelings and she gripped her head, screaming loudly, and released a shockwave as her chakra pulsated within the confines of the tree. She ripped into her attackers, tearing them to shreds. She delivered a powerful downward strike to the skull of one, her chakra exoskeleton-coated fist smashing against the bone and allowing blood to flow from the wound. She then gripped the attacker and raised her knee to smash it against her fellow Taki shinobi's stomach before throwing the body against her second opponent. The two smashed against each other, only for Fu to blur into existence above them, smashing her feet down against their chests, breaking their ribs and impaling their lungs with the bones. The final attacker went to attack her from behind, but Fu merely turned around and caught the assailant by the neck. "Demon! Demon! Demon!" the attacker continued to whisper, as if it were a mantra. "That's right." Fu snarled as she choke-slammed the assailant, and then straddled him. She gripped the opponent's skull, her thumbs tearing apart his eyes as she stabbed them into his eye sockets. However, he still continued to chant the word demon over and over again. "I am a demon." And with a final burst of chakra and application of pressure, gray matter and blood splattered across the ground as Fu crushed her attacker's skull. Fu then proceeded to continuously punch her opponent's face in, blood coating her knuckles with each strike. The creature in the room with her watched, staring at her with dark, calculating eyes. Then it released a soft sound of interest once it saw bubbling red chakra enveloping Fu's body. Cor. Kamina laid his head upon his paws as he watched Naruto train through the young male's vision. Needless to say, the Raijuu had been pleased with the blonde's rapid development over the last 2 months. During the short time in which the blonde boy had resided in Takigakure, Kamina had made a harsh regimen which would hopefully increase both the boy's ability to master techniques of his bloodline, as well as shorten the process in which he would have to wait in order for the young Jinchuriki to use Tenten properly without making any reckless mistakes. The Raijuu would have debated whether or not the blonde's successful attempt in using Tenten was either his hidden potential, or just sheer luck. Though the lightning beast still kept the option open that it was possibly both. After all, he was a being of the supernatural. He could sense things that occurred beyond the life of many mortal men. The beast had watched Naruto do several different regiments with his clones, doing a handstand with 2 fingers infused with lightning chakra, several leaf training and waterfall training exercises in order to completely master his wind element, completing several katas in order to retain memory of each step in each of his fighting styles. Study battle strategies based upon old war tales in order to improve his mind for tactical warfare in order to create better strategies. And lastly, meditation so that the blonde may find peace with himself and release any emotional turmoil within him so that he may find enlightenment. Overall, there were approximately 700 clones doing these regimens for the past 2 months. The rate of the young blonde's progress has been one that the Raijuu had not expected it to be. Naruto was a real piece of work, inside and outside the area of training, and Kamina was proud of his student for being so. While he was a perfectionist concerning Naruto's training, it didn't mean he did not care for the boy and did not expect his student to be placed on a pedestal after his training was complete. Kamina knew well enough that caring for the boy, training him and helping him grow, made him feel something akin to kinship towards Naruto, and so he felt a great deal of pride and respect for his young pupil as he continued to grow by leaps and bounds. Though that wasn't what was currently on the mind of the legendary creature. As much as he cared for the boy, he also worried about things outside of our blonde hero. The egg-shaped stone that the Nanabi Jinchuriki protected was something that was old, foul, something that he had remembered long ago during the time in which the gods had fought against the kaiju. It was something he thought he would have never felt again, but he did. The first time he had felt it, it was with Gajira, but Naruto had tamed the beast, thus the creature had become more docile, possibly due to Naruto's caring nature more so than the fact that Naruto let the young kaiju go. Yet, this feeling was older than Gajira. It was vile and aggressive, something which made him feel like destroying it while he had the chance, and there were few things which could make him feel that way. Whatever it was that resided in what the Raijuu assumed was an egg, was old, almost as old as he was, and it was dangerous for it to come out. You seem to be thinking deeply over there, Raijuu. I would be careful about that. A voice erupted near the thunder beast. Kamina turned to see the bijou inside the cage and smirked as he saw the cocky grin upon the fox's face. If you frow your face anymore, then your face will remain that way. The Raijuu only huffed before he gave a light smile. I'll be sure to heed those words. After all, I wouldn't want to look like your grouchy ass any time soon, Kamina said as he chuckled when he got a snarl out of Kurama. The two remained silent. Kurama kept his eyes closed and his lips into a frown before he opened one of his giant crimson eyes and smirked. So are you going to tell me? I have no idea what you are talking about. Kurama scoffed. Don't play dumb with me, Raijuu. I know something caught your interest when we went in that tree and it sure as hell wasn't the other Jinchuriki or the bug, Chome. The fox stretched his limbs inside his cage as he looked down upon the smaller canine figure. That stone, or whatever it was, caught your interest. You said it was evil and yet even I could not sense ill intent coming out of it. Kamina grunted as his eyes narrowed. You like to pry into things much, don't you? I was living inside a kid who turned himself into a dumbass before he met you. Besides, I am stuck inside here, so prying would be my only thing to do for entertainment, so fucking sue me. The giant nine-tailed beast said as he looked down upon the thunder beast and frowned. Now are you going to tell me or what? The Yoko asked. Kamina looked at the bijou, and closed his eyes and huffed. The stone is an egg. What kind of creature that is inside, I am unsure as to what it is, but I have my assumptions that whatever may be inside is not friendly. It is angry, and it wants blood. The divine beast turned into its bipedal form as it sat crisscrossed before speaking once more. I held many theories about what it may have been, a human spirit, a remnant of chakra that resided from the Jubi long ago, chakra from another source, a fallen god, and lastly, a kaiju. Though you stated that you could not sense any evil intentions coming off from that stone allows me to cut off my suspicions of it being a human spirit as well as a remnant of the Jubi. Not many gods exist today, as those that survived over the last 1,000 years have either gone through reincarnation, have weakened considerably, or faded. The energy does not resemble any god that I have known or know. Yet despite that thought, I figured that if you would have sensed it as well, it would have been foreign to you, but the strength of emotion that remains from a fallen god before it's turned to insanity is still strong. So my only option would have to be a kaiju. A kaiju, you say? Like that run of a lizard? It was a question that didn't require answering. Kurama tapped his claws and thought as the Raijuu's words piqued the massive bijou's interest. Shouldn't be possible. I would have sensed the emotions that it was carrying off. Kamina shook his head. Don't be so sure. Kaiju are different from other entities that have lived in the world, and as intelligent as they may be, they are only animals. However, they are more than just that as well. They are forces of nature. While they can be emotional, primordial instinct overcomes all, which is why you probably cannot sense it unless you were outside of this cage. Emotions can be insignificant to a kaiju and have very few reasons to attack other kaiju unless for certain reasons. Kamina raised 2 claws. To fight for territory, dominance, or to feed. They had found humans insignificant, except for the few that found them a threat or held purpose. Those very few were the ones to be wary of because they showed a powerful emotion which signified danger to many. I can only recall a few that held that, yet there is one that remains of interest. The irony of the situation would be that this region would have been its territory, that is, if my assumptions are proven correct. A kaiju that is infamous. One would think that during my years as part of the Jubi I would have remembered kaiju, let alone one in this part of the elemental nations. That was because a lot either went into hiding or hibernated. However, this one was different. It came from another land. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow at that. After the Jubi was sealed and after the passing of the Rakuto Sennin, Kamina narrowed his eyes. I would have thought then you were a runt, wouldn't have been paying much attention to anything outside of your inner circle. Kurama growled. Only you would think that, you minor deity. Many of my siblings could handle themselves and the few that needed my aid only followed me until they were able to take care of themselves, Chomei being one of the few that followed me or even mutually conversed with me until we were older. The fox's lone eye narrowed as he looked upon Kamina's pale blue eyes. Now speak, what is this wretched kaiju? It wasn't wretched as it was renowned. It brought fear to all things in life. You could say it was somewhat like the Jubi, but significantly different. It absorbed energy, so it absorbed chakra from humans and animals in order to grow stronger and maintain its vitality. If I am correct, it was over 50 years that it brought tyranny to the humans in these parts before it got captured. Kamina laid his head down once more and thought about it a little longer. It was called the Phoenix of the South, yet it looked nothing like a phoenix nor Suzaku. The real name of the creature, which I know well, was Iris. The fox hummed as it placed its index claw near its canines. Iris sounds stupid to me. In a sense it would, but its name signifies something that all creatures need, the ability to see. You need sight in order to see the world around you, to see the birth of life and the loss of it. Iris, this kaiju signifies the eye of life, I suppose, if that makes sense. It makes sense, I suppose. The eye of life, that creature would need energy as its eye to see the light of life. Otherwise darkness would claim it. Kurama rubbed his chin and paused. Have you ever thought what would happen if that egg was, in fact, Iris? Kamina paused for a moment as he looked down in thought, and slowly nodded. I would honestly be worried. Kaiju could not be killed by mortal hands in the old days, and being that Iris was a powerful kaiju in its day, I would suspect that when it returns it would be considerably weaker in comparison. So it is possible that it could be killed before it would be able to become fully grown. Kurama was about to say something once more before Naruto's voice popped in. Why, it's really, NGH, not helping my training if you guys are talking, thought Naruto, who was holding his hand in position while doing lightning chakra training. I can't concentrate properly. Oh, I am sorry, do you want a tissue? Because you're sounding like a little bitch right now, Kurama said as he huffed at the blonde. Oh, real fucking mature, you overgrown fur coat. Why don't you go back to licking your balls? Hey, I don't do that. Total bullshit / total bullshit. Both Kamina and Naruto said to Kurama, leading the fox to roar with agitation as it smacked its hand-like forepaw on the wet floor. The great nine-tailed fox snarled at his humiliation and embarrassment as he held out his hand to show razor-sharp claws and a maniacal grin from within his cage. I cannot wait to make you my personal. Kurama! The giant fox had paused his rant as he heard Komiai's voice cry out to him in the sound of worry. Kurama raised his head and smirked as he huffed out air from his nose. He closed his eyes and called out Chomei a few times. After a few minutes with no reply, Kurama had grown slightly cautious of the situation that was at hand. He wasn't the only one that noticed something was wrong. Both other parties were dangerously silent, cautious even as they sensed the eerie feeling coming onto them. Something is wrong with Fu. I sensed her chakra spike and suddenly I felt Komiai's chakra leak out. I know. Chomei called up to me and I haven't heard from him since. He knows not to call me unless it was something that involved danger for us. Something must have gotten to his container for him to call my name on such short notice. Kurama said as he narrowed his eyes. Kamina narrowed his eyes as well, suspecting only a thing that could have occurred directly. The egg, it possibly hatched. He called out to Naruto. Naruto, stop what you are doing and get to the girl now, she could be in danger. The Thunder Beast ordered. Right, I'm on it. Naruto pushed his fingers up as he landed on his feet, his clones dispelled as he rushed forward with a heavy burst of chakra adding to his movements. He had ran at a fast pace towards the region where Fu had normally resided. The chakra signature was coming off in that direction in waves and it was growing. Something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong with Fu if her chakra was flooding out so wildly. It didn't take him long to make it to her literal tree house, and just as he attempted to move towards the entrance, a burst of chakra exploded out of the tree, causing the tree to disintegrate into pieces as a vile chakra erupted forth. Naruto being pushed back by the force and had been sent flying past several trees before his feet landed on the soft grass which aided in halting his movement. Debris and smoke had surrounded the place near the explosion and Naruto could not see anything as he had looked up toward the area. He stood on his feet and jumped into the now desolate smoked clearing as he looked around in the smoke. The blonde coughed lightly, the smoke dying off while in his waking search to find his fellow Jinchuriki. However, once everything seemed to die down he could not find any form of his mint-haired, self-proclaimed friend. He paused in confusion as he looked around. Naruto did not understand what had happened just now. He could not see his friend, but he could feel the chakra which was still around the area. He took a few steps back as he looked around the large hole where the tree resided. It wasn't until he felt the chakra erupt once more when he was on full alert. Naruto, move now! Kurama called out. Naruto followed his Biju's words and he leaped backwards. Just as he moved away from where he was standing, something crashed down onto the earthy terrain. Naruto backflipped to the other side and landed on all fours as he stared upon the figure that was now in front of him. Blue eyes suddenly widened as he gazed upon the figure and felt small chills run down his spine. The creature was positioned on all fours, but its body structure gave one the assumption that it could switch from being a quadruped to a biped. 5 animalistic claws dug into the ground. It slightly resembled an insect due to the giant curved horn which stretched out from its forehead. It was coated in blood red and black skin and from each shoulders, 2 large spikes jutted outwards at an angle. The oddity also possessed 2 slim tails that protruded from its tailbone area and a pair of large wings which protruded from between the shoulder area. Its circular eyes and the inside of its concave-shaped mouth glowed with white light, but still served to add to its intimidation factor. What is that? Naruto paused as he gazed upon the creature. Said creature gave a small hiss and clicking sound as it stared upon the blonde with a predatory look within its eyes. Where is Fu? That Naruto is Fu, Kamina said. A low vibrant hiss echoed across the forest floor which shook the ground. The large amount of chakra that the host held had caused rocks to float into the air, the ground to split, and an ominous wind to erupt around her like a wrathful forthcoming of the end of days. That is Fu? Naruto exclaimed in surprise and disbelief. He closed his right hand into a fist and squeezed tightly. Bullshit. I've never seen anything like that. No way that's Fu. You wouldn't have known Naruto because you have never seen anything like this before until now. Kurama interrupted this time as he narrowed his eyes. That form is the second stage of a Jinchuriki host using a Biju's powers. I have not known many that had controlled this state, but from experience with your mother using my power and going through this state, well, I should tell you this. The mighty canine paused. All my instincts, all my anger and wrath, she succumbed to it, turning into a miniature tailed beast. With Fu, she is more or less a berserker. Something had triggered her to go through this transformation, and something triggered her into using Komiai's chakra. I don't know what it would be, but that is something we are going to figure out after we deal with her. Right. Naruto said quietly, still not being able to believe that this is what the power of a Jinchuriki was like, using a great portion of a tailed beast's power. Not even he had gone through such a state. If there was a time that he would enter it, he would understand what kind of danger he would pose as toward anyone. Have you tried to contact Chomei to see what was wrong with her? I've been doing that long before we came here. Something is wrong with the both of them. Chomei is silent. It's like something is blocking our communication, or he's too damn brainless to not even answer my replies. Kurama narrowed his eyes. You're going to have to give them a wake-up call. I don't think there is anything else you can do until your perverted godfather arrives. I have no doubt that he had sensed this. Same with the rest of the village. I don't think they will be too kind after all of this. Kamina replied, you're going to have to stall. Some of your techniques might not do anything to her, but there is a chance that you still can do some damage to where you stalled her enough until help arrives. Otherwise, keep it safe and keep a good distance away from her and try not to die. Thanks, Kamina-sensei. Your words of advice are sure helpful. The blonde said with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. The distraction of conversing with two entities inside his mind had caused him to forget about the berserk Jinchuriki for the moment, but he was knocked out of his thoughts as Fu unleashed a bestial roar. The shockwave caused by the roar kicked up dirt and dust, and sent the blonde shinobi skidding backwards several feet. Try not to die, huh? Naruto mused. Fu launched herself at high speeds, appearing to flicker out a few. The scary thing was that it was no form of shunshin nor was it teleportation. It was pure, unadulterated speed. She then appeared out of thin air, her fist already reared back to strike. Time seemed to slow down for Naruto as he narrowed his eyes. A bead of sweat traced down the side of his head as he placed a hand sign up. The fist had crashed down and generated another massive shockwave and caused a massive dust cloud to form. The cloud was quickly dispersed by Fu's rapidly buzzing wings and revealed the Nanabi Jinchuriki standing in the small crater she had caused from her attack. She growled in annoyance when she looked at the result of her attack, only to find that the blonde was nowhere in her field of vision. However, her other senses picked up on his location. She then slowly looked up and snarled lightly, gazing up at the blonde who was now floating in the air. The four-tailed Jinchuriki did not move as she looked up at the blonde, waiting for his next move. Thank Kami that I had mastered Bukujutsu. I wouldn't have thought that I would need it, but she moved faster than most people I've faced. Not to mention that it was unpredictable. Naruto swayed higher in the air as he looked down at the four-tailed state of the seven-tailed Jinchuriki. I need to be careful. I know for certain that I am faster than her on land, however. He stopped thinking as he looked down at her, gazing at her wings. The possessed Jinchuriki snarled as she stretched her wings out before they began to vibrate at high speeds. Slowly, she levitated off the ground, looking back up at the blonde before she had launched herself into the air at her target. She is going to have the upper hand in the sky. I'm running on chakra, and as much as I have, I can only go on for so long. He thought as he flew down away from the insect Jinchuriki, hovering just above the trees as he flew at great speeds across the forest. He looked back, seeing the flying Jinchuriki not far behind him and picking up speed. He ducked under arms of several trees, hovering feet off from the ground as he moved side to side, avoiding the tree line in front of him. He looked up briefly, quickly realizing that the beast was not there, only to hear the beating of its wings across from him. A loud snarl erupted near him as he turned to see Fu's enraged state coming at him. He ducked lower, missing the main attack by mere inches. However, the second attack had soon come into play. One of Fu's four tails wrapped around the blonde's ankle, stopping his flight as he was forcefully pulled back and dragged through the air by the four-tailed creature. Branches had hit him dead in the face, scratching his cheeks a few times, and leaves got into his mouth before they were above the canopy of the forest and into the sky once more. Naruto looked up at the creature before it looked back at him with a wicked smile. Why am I getting the feeling that I do not like the way she is looking at me? He thought. His question was answered when Fu's tail lifted him higher into the air and was swung downward, releasing him as the momentum quickly gained for the force in which the tail threw him. Shit! Naruto looked back as he instantly saw the ground. He passed the 100-meter mark and was falling faster. Within a few seconds he would become silly putty on the ground and Fu could finish him off easily if he was crippled. Naruto formed his signature cross-shaped hand sign and quickly yelled, Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 500 clones appeared behind him and stuck together by holding onto the original. The force of the head caused all of the clones to dissipate instantly, and Naruto landed heavily on the ground, causing a small crater beneath him. He coughed erratically, trying to get the wind back into his lungs. He could hear the vibrations of the wings above him, and he opened his eyes only to look directly in the eyes of the miniature-tailed beast. It was a few mere inches away from the Nanabi Jinchuriki. Her mouth opened, and it held a small black ball in it. It then chomped down and swallowed the black sphere. The Jinchuriki let out steam as a light slowly erupted from her mouth. Shit, damn it, boss, he said as he pulled out a kunai and stabbed himself. Naruto instantly exploded into smoke before the attack launched itself onto the ground. Not more than 10 yards behind the possessed Jinchuriki, Naruto looked upon the massive explosion that occurred, the representation of the power which the miniature Bijudama had held. He stared in shock and awe as a massive dome of red and white light and chakra expanded outwards, engulfing all things in its radius. Naruto's hair whipped back wildly and he was forced to shield his eyes from the dust and dirt that flew through the air as a result of the shockwave from the attack. That attack would have killed me. He screamed in his mind and felt beads of sweat come down his face. Is she trying to go overkill or what? Usually that would be a bad thing when facing opponents that are strong, though this is a different matter. I suppose, Kamina said. No shit, Naruto cried out in his mind as he felt the winds die down from Fu's attack. Once they did, he hopped into the trees to observe the damage, but nearly lost his footing when he gazed upon it. The Kyubi Jinchuriki looked at the destruction that was laid waste upon the earth and couldn't even form a coherent thought. A massive crater was all that was left of the forested area, with a diameter of about 3 kilometers and a depth of 10 feet. Trees that had been standing in front the miniature Bijou had been obliterated, vaporized by the impact of the blast, and any animal life that had been within the vicinity most likely had been killed off as well. Naruto then shifted his focus to Fu's bestial state as he slowly took a few steps forward and calmly looked at her backside. Naruto, what are you doing? Don't go near her, Kurama spoke in a commanding tone. I'm going to try and talk with her, perhaps her conscience is still there somewhere. Why not try and attempt to communicate with Chome once more to see if he can hear you or not? Perhaps he could rein in his chakra enough to help Fu out, Naruto told the fox, who in return gave a growl. Come on, Kyubi, we don't have many options left. I don't want to seriously hurt Fu or get myself killed in order to wait for help to come. Sooner or later Jiraiya will be here and he will have something to subdue the chakra. Besides, this is about helping our siblings in need, right? Kurama paused for a moment and scoffed before he grunted in acknowledgement. Very well, try calling her out then. But don't blame me if this plan fails. He had been trying to distract her or avoid any attacks from her berserk state. Possibly, he had wondered if he could communicate with her conscience if it was still somewhere in there, which he hopefully wished it was. He slowly stepped toward the Jinchuriki carefully. He had watched the possessed girl turn her head, the helmet of the beetle head covering her face, but her eyes still looking through the helmet. Naruto stopped moving as he had gazed upon the girl with a slightly worried look. Fu, can you hear me? He asked quietly, looking at the girl in the chakra cloak. It's Naruto. You have to give me an answer if you are in there somewhere. I came here to help you, but I need to know if you are still in there or not. His voice soon became calmer, more natural, as he attempted to get to the girl's thoughts. I need an answer, Fu. One would be good about now. He looked at her as he briefly waited for a moment. Fu had not moved an inch in the moments of Naruto speaking, however, nothing came into the girl's thoughts as she released a mixture of clicks and snaps from her throat. With a burst of speed, she was preparing herself to go on to the onslaught and tear Naruto to pieces. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the beast come its way towards him. Time felt slow to him, adrenaline pumped slightly as he held his position firmly. He looked at his possible attacker dead in the eyes, waiting for the results to occur. Crash! In a blur of red and white, Jiraiya crashed down between the two Jinchuriki at high speeds. He looked Fu dead in the eye and quickly smacked a piece of paper directly onto Fu's horn before the beast state could react to Jiraiya's movements. The beast gave a low roar of confusion as chakra steamed from its body before it cried out in agony as it attempted to grab the tag, only for the chakra to slowly die off from Fu's hands and quickly afterwards, her entire body. In a few moments, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi had been subdued and fell to the floor face down on the ground, unconscious. Naruto looked a bit surprised as he stared at the scene that occurred. Shibuki later appeared to his side and placed a hand on his shoulder in order to shake him out of his stupor. "Naruto-kun, are you alright?" he asked in a worried tone. "Huh?" Naruto was dazed for a moment before shaking his head from the confusion and slowly nodded. Yeah, I'm alright. I was just caught up by the surprise, I suppose." Shibuki nodded, accepting the boy's words. "That's good. We felt the chakra spike not too long ago. It didn't take long for us to get here. We noticed you in the air with Fu, and Jiraiya-sama had intervened in order to prevent further damage. It's a good thing that you were left unscathed." "You're definitely right, Shibuki." Jiraiya turned and looked at the blonde with a smirk. "Hell, if I didn't have that containment seal made, then we would have had a difficult time on our hands, wouldn't we? Just what were you thinking on coming here? Could you not tell that something was wrong here?" "I did, but I know Fu. I just wanted to make sure she was safe, but something had concerned Kyubi and Kamina. They said something occurred to make Fu act that way." Jiraiya raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Really, what would that be?" "How about that?" exclaimed Shibuki as he pointed past them. The two Konoha shinobi followed the direction Shibuki was pointing in before their eyes widened at what they saw. It was an odd creature with 6 tentacles opening its chest up as it pulled the female Jinchuriki inside its body with said tentacles. The creature slowly closed its plating. It gave a slight cry as its eyes glowed yellow and a light slowly surrounded its body. "What the hell?" Jiraiya took a step back. Kamina narrowed his eyes from within Naruto's mindscape as he stared upon the scene at hand. He gave a low snarl and looked at the creature slowly changing and growing, giving a low roar from within the light. "Iris,